Remind the members of the council that we are webcasting the meeting, and we know because we've had some inquiries that people are listening, so bear that in mind as we proceed with the meeting. I want to welcome everyone. I want to remind the members of the council who've been here for a while that we received statutory authority in this last session to expand the council from 7 members to 11. I consulted with longstanding members of the council regarding potential new members. I've contacted several people, 2 of whom are here, and I'll ask everyone to introduce him or herself in just a moment. And there are a couple of other people whom I contacted who are mulling over whether they can serve on the council or not, so I'll not mention their names until I hear something definitive from them. But I think it's important that this council be larger and that it represent a greater diversity of interests and expertise if we're going to do our work effectively and well. I would like to just have everyone introduce themselves. I know you've probably met, but I don't know if you know very much about the background, particularly of our new members. And I'd like them to introduce themselves, and then we'll get on with the actual agenda. So, Dr. King, if you don't mind.
Yes, Daniel King, Superintendent for San Juan Alamo Independent School District down in the Redland.
And I'm pleased to say that that Dr. King could join us. He's absolutely one of the most talented and effective superintendents in Texas. He's done some extraordinary things with children from poor socioeconomic backgrounds, both in terms of lowering dropout rates and sending a larger number of students to college. He's a real superstar in Texas education. It's a delight and an honor to have him serving on the council. President Flores.
Bill Flores, President of the University of Houston downtown, and it's a pleasure to be a participant. I've only been here 2 years, but admire a great deal of the work of the commission. So.
Well, thank you very much. I'll also, obviously we have a couple of members who are modest. So I will tell you that President Flores is, I think he'd been here just a few months when he talked about how we would, how he wanted to look at the admission standards at his university and make sure that the admission standards were commensurate with the ability of the institution to help students succeed. He's been a leader in emphasizing student success and placing, making sure that faculty and the administration have been very much committed to that particular goal, which has to be the most fundamental goal for all of higher education in Texas. So President Flores has been a leader in that area. We're introducing ourselves.
Very good. And sorry about that. I had a board meeting that just went a little bit longer.
Okay, particularly for the new members.
Hi, I'm Phyllis Snodgrass, and I work for the Texas. I'm not on. I'm Phyllis Snodgrass. I work for the Texas Association of Business. I work with the chambers across the state of Texas on business issues, especially related to education.
And Mr. Fitzpatrick, who's also a new member of the State P-16 Council. Would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is John Fitzpatrick. I'm Executive Director.
Yeah.
So I see.
Lost some facial hair, and I've lost a tie, so that's good. My name is John Fitzpatrick. I'm Executive Director of the Texas High School Project and Communities Foundation of Texas. We're a public-private partnership and try to bring philanthropy and the state together to focus on, traditionally we focused on college readiness, focused on high schools, but we're increasingly working more on post-secondary access and post-secondary completion, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Well, thank you very much. We're delighted to have you here. And
Larry Temple, I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Workforce Commission.
Yes.
If they don't know me by now, let's keep it that way. We administer the unemployment insurance, the training programs, Workforce Investment Act, the TANF Welfare Reform Program. We work with the community college with our skills development grant, which is incumbent and new hire training. And it's been a very successful program, and we do a lot of things with the youth in Texas through our discretionary funding. With done a lot of stuff with John over the years, and with our youth programs. So.
Yes, and I should point out for the new members that when I rotated back on as chair of this council, I asked the members what issues they believe should be the focus of our attention over the next couple of years. And the two issues that came up recurrently were, number one, improving college readiness in Texas, and number two, aligning the educational pipeline more closely with workforce development, and particularly higher education. Community colleges obviously do a much better job of that than universities do, but particularly given the job numbers we keep seeing come out of Washington, it seems to me that is precisely what our agenda should be, to align higher education and the entire educational pipeline with workforce and economic development.
Right. Good afternoon. Deborah Wanzer. I'm the Commissioner at the Department of Assistive and Rehabilitative Services. And we have the vocational rehabilitation programs as well as some early intervention programs for children with disabilities, both developmental disabilities, autism, but we serve people with disabilities.
Permanently appointed since our last meeting.
Yes,
Congratulations.
yes, thank you. I was serving as the interim commissioner beginning in January and then was appointed in June.
Congratulations. Well, let's get started. The first order of business is to look at the minutes. We didn't have a quorum, and I noticed that that's one of the corrections we have to make in the minutes of the last meeting. It says a forum instead of a quorum, so that's the one significant correction that we'll make. But if you've had a chance to look at the minutes and you would like to, has everyone had a chance to look at them? I hope so. Okay, may I have a motion to approve the minutes? Second? All those in favor? Aye. Same sign. Okay, the minutes are approved. Let's move on. This is the opportunity, if we go to agenda item 4, this is a time when we ask for a council member to update us on any particular activities that they have underway that they would like to inform other members of the council about. John, you've got a whole bunch of things going on. Why don't you tell us what you're up to?
Oh, okay.
Well, I think there's one really exciting development related to what Mr. Temple said earlier in terms of STEM education. So I think there's some exciting news, Dr. Perez, if it's okay to share.
Absolutely, please.
There's going to be a commitment of $25 million by Texas Guaranteed to create a new T-STEM Challenge Scholarship Program. And this has been a incredibly complex process, and I really want to acknowledge David Gardner in his absence. He was really the lead that put this together with the rest of your team, Commissioner Perez, as well as Kate McGrath and other folks from the governor's office. It was part of HB 2910, which had two components. One half of it was the STEM community college challenge aspect. The other was about trying to create the infrastructure for more public-private partnerships in higher education, specifically focused on community colleges and regional four-year universities. I think there's a huge opportunity for the Texas Workforce Commission and all the work that you have done in STEM education, because part of this component is about internships. And an expectation that there will be strong relationships with local business, and that will lead to both internships for students as well as in-kind support of the STEM and workforce programs at the community colleges. So still a lot of details to be worked out at the staff level and through the rules-making process, but really encouraging, and I think there's a lot of enthusiasm in private philanthropy to build upon the investments. It's been about $110 million invested the last 10 years in STEM education, primarily at the K through 12 level, but to really look at actually some of the same things, Commissioner Paredes, that you mentioned in your opening about connecting more with the workforce and more with connecting K through 12 and higher education. So that's one update.
Well, it's important to note that one of the striking characteristics of the challenges in STEM education in this country, it applies not only to Texas but the rest of the country. I keep citing a statistic which I think is very telling. Students who declare a STEM field as a major in college graduate at higher levels than students who declare any other kind of major, but they don't graduate in STEM. They move into other fields, and that statistic, I think, tells us that they're the best prepared students coming out of high school and going to colleges and universities, but they're not well enough prepared to do STEM work. And that's one of the challenges we have. One of the things we took into account as we started talking about this T-STEM program was whether we had enough students in Texas that could do STEM work in higher education and would essentially take up this, be able to use the scholarship money that we had available, or that we were talking about. And unfortunately, the evidence is we simply must increase the number of students coming out of high school who can do STEM work. And I should say that we're defining STEM work not only to include the achievement of a baccalaureate degree, but also students who achieve credentials, for example, as a computer technician or engineering technicians. They would all qualify for support through this program. So we're defining STEM in the broadest way possible. Dr. King?
Yes, I guess maybe two key things. One, we're working with a consortium of districts and Jobs for the Future, Texas High School Project, and South Texas College to expand the work we've been doing with 18 to 26-year-olds. We opened a campus 4 years ago based on House Bill 1137 to help young people ages 18 to 26 who had not finished high school or had dropped out to get their high school diploma. Next month, we'll be approaching 800 graduates from that program in 4 years, and together with area districts, the number is in the neighborhood of 2,000 young people in that age group that had dropped out or were non-completers. And we're working now with a consortium of a number of districts to expand that and really work on the college connection and strengthen the college connection for those. And then the second one, we've gotten approved for our third early college high school in the district, and really trying to build out our program of connecting all high school students to higher education, whether it be a four-year college or community college, whether it be a associate degree or certification, but get them ready, get them connected, and get them complete. So we're trying to build on that work, and again, in partnership with Texas High School Project, South Texas College, Jobs for the Future, and other organizations. So
exciting. Bill?
This summer we took we're participating as part of the coordinating board's post-secondary effort in AVID, and we took a whole team of faculty and staff to the AVID conference in the summer. We've been working on that as a way to really, as a small segment that we want to broaden throughout the entire university. So yesterday I had a team that had gone to that conference and also went to the AACU. They came forward with a presentation of how we could take some of the experiences for AVID and also from the High Impact Experience Conference we had with AACU and carry that throughout the entire four-year experience at the University of Houston downtown. And so I'm very excited. We also are working in partnership with Project Grad, which we have on campus right now with middle schools that we have, and dual credit all of that's going to be integrated in the program. So I think it's a great way of creating that flow from K-12 and really from the middle schools right into college.
News report?
Well, we've had an exciting session on education, and I've been charged with trying to take the message out to chambers and get the business community excited, and that's been somewhat of a challenge. I think that the business community sees issues related to workforce, but connecting the dots with them sometimes on how they need to get involved on the education front can be somewhat of a challenge. So I've spent a lot of time on the phone with chamber people. This summer, we just got back from an annual conference, so we had about 300 attendees, and we brought in a really nice panel of folks. We had Sandy Kress, we had Cheryl Oldham from the U.S. Chamber, and Drew Sherberley from the Austin Chamber, and our own education lobbyist, Nelson Salinas, talking about education issues and how the last session went and how chambers can get more involved, and that was kind of exciting to try to interact with them, and so we're going to be undertaking some surveys. We're trying to figure out how we can be more effective at messaging because we've learned some lessons from this session, and things tend to start spinning, and so you want to be effective. You want to give them the kind of information they need to have the discussions in the communities that can be effective and not just talking points. So that's where we're working right now, really trying to figure out how to be a little bit more effective in those discussions.
One of the things that I hope we'll talk about extensively and come up with some solid recommendations is the issue that's been mentioned here already, the issue of establishing internships, especially paid internships, for college students to work in fields where there's a high demand. Mm-hmm. And to give those students an opportunity to get some real experience while they're still in school. We ought to be able to develop some academic courses that give students credit for getting a real experience on the job. It gives firms, it gives companies an opportunity to evaluate the skills of the interns and to make a determination about whether they would like to offer them a job post-credential, either associate's degree, a baccalaureate degree, or some kind of certificate. I think that one of the challenges we have in Texas is that students oftentimes make decisions about what kinds of careers they want to go into based on the media. We know, for example, that over the past 5 or 6 years, there's been a big spike in students who profess an interest in forensics. And it's because of all these CSI shows, and they think they're going to be working in a lab that where you look at a paint chip and determine it's a 2005 Mercedes convertible that's blue and has a beige interior. We need to make sure that students have real-life experiences working and can make an informed decision about what careers they want to take up, and the chambers could help us enormously in this regard.
I think they would love to do that.
Community by community. Larry?
Well, we had, thank goodness, a rather quiet session for us compared to some other agencies. We've been dealing with obviously a lot of layoffs around the state, the ISDs in particular, working with them with our unemployment insurance as well as some of the state agencies. Working with them, we've put together a crosswalk, if you will, for teachers who are looking for employment in fields other than education, to give them an idea. Rich Fischel will be here later on. He helped develop that. But if you have a degree in speech, what are some of the jobs and what are some of the skills that, how that would translate into the private sector, and then locating and identifying jobs. Another thing that I'm real proud of that we're working on, matter of fact, the governor did a bill signing last week, I think it was last week, at St. Philip's College down in San Antonio, working with 7 Central Texas colleges, with Central Texas College taking the lead. We're automating a process that gives servicemen and women credit particularly in this one is focused on allied health, credit for their experience. So we're going to automate, be web-based to where an individual can self-serve and get an unofficial transcript, but Central Texas College is actually going to provide an official transcript and articulation agreements among these, and hopefully something after we get it tested that we can roll out. But trying to get these men and women fast-tracked into the private sector, returning. Interesting that we had a guardsman that was telling us that he was a surgical tech in the military, but in his private sector, when he wasn't active duty, when he wasn't deployed, he worked as a warehouse manager. But because he had the military training, he didn't have the private sector training to get a job in the local hospitals, and he had to make a living. And then when he got deployed, the Army had to spend a lot of time bringing him back up to speed. And so it was kind of chasing the tail kind of situation. So we're proud of that, and hopefully, obviously, in the technical fields, it's much easier for that crosswalk than say in the humanities. But there are other areas. A drill sergeant probably would be good in speech and psychology, wouldn't you think?
I would certainly think so.
At a minimum, right?
Yeah, then
motivation speaking.
Yes, and persuasive power. Yes,
so,
absolutely.
So that's what we're doing, and again, and I'll go back to Rich Purcell. The economy, comparatively to the rest of the nation, is really good. We're at least a percentage below the national employment. Half the jobs created in the nation since July of 2009 have been in Texas, or 48%. We're still seeing job growth. Our workforce, Texas, is larger than it's ever been in the history of the state. So a lot of people move in here to go to work, and that connection that's got to be made. The good news for employers is because we have a lot of people who are still on unemployment, by definition, they're unemployed by no fault of their own. So we have a good pool of skilled or trainable people who are in our system that can make some really good workers for our employers. So that's
What's going on at DARS?
Well, a couple of things, actually. As I listen to you all talk, I just want to remind you and also let you know that I'm real interested in working with you all. As you have your initiatives, I'd really encourage you to think about people with disabilities. And in our vocational rehabilitation program, a subset of that is our transition program. And in that program, we work with students in high schools and help them transition to higher education or training or work. And so I think we can bring some support to you in ensuring that our kids are able to participate in a lot of these initiatives, as well as bring some resources to the table. And I'd just like for us to be able to explore that. On the other end is our early childhood intervention program, and I guess that's the program that's at the very, very front of the pipeline of these workers. And these are children 0 to 3 who have developmental disabilities, and we work with those children and then transition them into public school at 3. That program has had a fairly significant budget reduction, and so going into 2012, the fiscal year, we're going to be reducing the number of children seen statewide in that program by about 15%, and we're going to do that by narrowing eligibility. But we'll still have a presence in all of the communities and, still be able to do some real good work. But that program did see some reductions.
Thank you. Let's. I think it's. Sorry, John.
I just wanted to add, I neglected to note that Linda Battles is in attendance, and she was a key part of the team with the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board that developed this $25 million T-STEM Challenge Scholarship Program, so I wanted to thank and acknowledge her.
Thank you. Linda does a lot of wonderful things around the coordinating board. Let's move on with the agenda. Our Our next item is discussion about how this council can more directly support the Generation Texas campaign. I think the members of the council who have been around a while are aware of this project. It is every time we get a report, it turns out it's doing even more exciting things, and we have a couple of people here, Catherine Jones, and thank you. And I've said to Kat on several occasions that I think the real challenge is we've got to connect the campaign of what's actually happening in the schools, and we have the people around this table that can help us achieve that. So please let us know how things are going, and we'll discuss how we might be able to help out.
Now it's on. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Prentice, and thank you for having us here today. We're excited to give you an update. I thought when I started that I believe everyone's familiar with Generation Texas, but I do a quick overview of it for some of the newer members and then dive into some updates about what's been going on recently and then a discussion. So for folks that may not be familiar with Generation Texas, this is a statewide movement that's really about creating a college-going and career-ready culture across Texas. And when we use the word college, we're talking about any type of post-secondary education beyond high school. So we use that word, and that's the word that we know from talking to folks on the ground, that word is sort of the container for all of those types of education. The way we've approached it is really looking at it in terms of really targeting the students, especially of them seeing themselves as being this generation, using this inclusive language around something that they can really own and take on, of being the most successful generation that Texas has ever produced, called Generation Texas. And what that means is that they go through education and come out of their post-secondary education ready for their careers. This is really the manifesto that you may have seen. That's kind of the spirit of this movement. It's about being strong, being independent, being ready for careers, supporting families, going to college, facing new challenges, having unlimited potential, believing in the future, following dreams, and being the leaders of tomorrow. Really what Generation Texas is, because I get that question a lot sometimes too, like what is this? It's not exactly a program. It's actually, the programs that are in place in so many of the communities are the programs that are creating Generation Texas, and we've partnered with many of them, as you'll see that. But really what it is it's a movement. It's a shared vision. It's a goal about making college an expectation and a priority for everyone in the state. And it really refers to this culture. And if you talk about culture, we're talking about really changing values and mindset that result in changed behaviors that are passed on from generation to generation in families. So going over that really quickly, that is a lot of what kind of how the setup is for Generation Texas. We have actually launched officially out into 2 pilot communities this past fall, focusing on San Antonio and Fort Worth in the Metroplex. And those 2 communities really allowed us to kind of build a lot of the tools and pieces of the campaign, to launch the website that launched last October, and really get the movement going in those launch communities. As we've started to, in the spring, what we started to do was move into some of the other key high-growth areas of the state. And one of the initiatives that we put in place that happened on May 20th was we declared May 20th Generation Texas Day. And what we asked, the simple base ask, was everybody in the state wear your favorite college t-shirt. So everybody could be part of it. And what we found was it was a great way, first of all, for us to enter some other markets, start working in Houston, work more in the Rio Grande Valley, work in El Paso, in addition to the Metroplex in San Antonio. We also have had a great partnership with a lot of the P-16 councils, even in some of these smaller communities that aren't considered the high-growth areas of the state. And what really happened on May 20th, it was the first time we did it. We didn't know, exactly how it would work. We put together these kits that I know Shannon Ratliff described in the last session, and it was pretty neat to see what happened. What I brought, which I think is the best way to give you a quick update on what it's really looking like and how Generation Texas Day went, is a video to show you a recap from that focuses on 3 of the communities that really went above and beyond just Gen Tex Day. Houston, we partnered with Vince Young. He came to the movement, brought his celebrity, made his Generation Texas story about how he's going back to college to finish, and used his celebrity to really bring the message to a lot of the kids from some of the neighborhoods that he's from. In the Valley, we worked with P-16s down there very closely to do a bunch of Generation Texas Day workshops in school that day. And then in San Antonio, they actually turned it into an entire college week. So I've got some highlights from that, and I'd love to go ahead and show you that video at this point.
But today is something called Gen Tex Day. It's a statewide effort to get high schoolers thinking about going to college. Today at Texas A&M Corpus Christi, they came up with a novel idea to show off their school spirit for the occasion. Faculty, staff, and students lined up on the campus's east lawn for a group photo.
Laredo celebrated a day to get Texas high schoolers excited to move on to the next step in their education. Generation Texas Day is set aside to celebrate and congratulate graduating seniors as they take their next step in education.
What Generation Texas is trying to do is ensure that not only individuals have a better future, but we as a state and we as a country have a more competitive economic future that we can depend on.
The Vince Young Foundation and Generation Texas are two organizations with similar missions. They're joining forces to ensure that Texas students have opportunities to go to college, leading to the most successful generation ever. Here to tell us more, please welcome NFL quarterback Vince Young.
Supported Gen Tex Day in such a profound way, with almost 300 stores throughout the state of Texas participating and 76,000 partners all wearing their favorite college t-shirt and their co-branded HEB and Generation Texas buttons.
Mayor Julian Castro kicked off the first ever College Week in San Antonio. Castro wants to inspire a college-going culture in the Alamo City. He's using his time to focus on how young people can get into college and afford it.
Today, we're going to be asking you to announce where you're going to college and also to take a pledge to complete your degree. Because remember, that's the end of the line. That's the real goal. It's great that you've gotten in, but we want you to stick with it and to actually complete your degree. And we want you to know that we'll be cheering you on along the way and supporting your endeavor. We believe in College Week and this college signing day because in the city, what we need is to create a great city that is economically competitive in the 21st century. We want this to be a city where no matter what job it is that you want to get, you can get it here.
Everybody can do one thing, and that's encourage a young person. It could be also something as simple as wearing a college t-shirt and having a young person say, oh my gosh, I thought about that school, or hey, did you go to Texas A&M? And that opens the door to tell your story.
I grew up in the culture of help family first, then school and everything else second. Did my parents want something better for me? Yes. Every parent wants something better. And heck yeah, my parents wanted something better. But they didn't realize education was part of the key.
When I was growing up, we were having to find things out. We really didn't have mentors.
I had nobody to tell me, how do you do it? How do you go to college? I knew for me to be able to change my family tree and have a different direction, that I would need to get after it myself.
Especially in our population, college isn't something that it's so easily talked about in your families. A lot of our students' parents didn't go to college, siblings may have not gone to college.
What I think is interesting here for me is this whole notion of changing that culture.
My family believes that a woman should stay at home. However, I have put the idea that a woman is not just a place at home, but it could also be in a business office and be a doctor, engineer, anything like that. So I want to make them feel proud of me.
Mom and dad didn't do it, or because grandparents came from Mexico. This is real. And high school diploma is graduation into another level of education.
In San Antonio, only 22% of all high school kids go to college, and I had no idea.
The high school I went to, my graduating class, only 5 of us so far have
graduate from college, and I saw that and I wanted to do something about it.
San Antonio can do so much better than that. I know it, so I just wanted to come in and be part of the change.
We've actually reached out to over 2,500 people in the Rio Grande Valley to inform them about Generation Texas and the importance of this movement to our students. When we started talking about it, a lot of them were just kind of curious as to what it meant. What is this little symbol, you know? They start putting it on their phones, they start putting it on their binders, they start asking questions. It's just amazing what a lanyard can do in getting the word out about what this movement is. It's great how it just spreads.
The students were so excited about Generation Texas. It has like everything you need in one website, like financial aid, scholarships.
You can go to gentex.org and get all this information about how you can get to college, man.
Generation Texas has helped me in every aspect of college, really getting in, staying in. And
me joining Gentex, I learned more, I studied harder, I've gotten, better grades.
You need to be focused on your book so you can be successful in life, man. And I want to see that for you. I know your parents want to see that for you, and your coaches want to see that for
you. The information that's available through the organization, just this combination of everything. It's like a one-stop shop.
You don't need to be looking for help anywhere else. Everything's in Gentex.
It's just an excellent, wonderful, awesome grassroots movement, man, and I love it.
HEB was inspired to be part of this because we believe that education, college education and post-high school education is the most important way to ensure that we have a healthy Texas economy, have Texans with enough money for them to be able to provide for their family in a meaningful way.
We use Generation Texas Day to introduce Generation Texas and the concept of creating a college-going and career-ready culture to our employees.
We're in every community in Texas for the most part. And because of that, we really do value the fact that education is part of what's going to make this state keep going forward.
I think as adults, it's our responsibility to encourage our young people and encourage the next generation so that they can then invest in themselves and want to invest in themselves. And Generation Texas does just that. I mean, it's the catalyst.
You can actually see that spark in a student, that it just clicks, like college is for me.
I think students have a genuine desire to learn, and when organizations like Generation Texas partner with other community organizations that connect with kids and give them the resources and help give them some direction, I think that kids are ready and waiting for it.
That's what it's all about, giving back and helping. And I feel like Generation Texas is doing an awesome job with that, and I'm glad that the Vince Young Foundation has partnered up with them to do some great things for our next generation.
This generation is going to require some hands-on, and I believe that Generation Tech, Vince Young Foundation, what we do here at the Empowerment Community Center is the hands-on combination, along with the information, to make this generation a very powerful generation.
And I think it really is important for the adults in the world to basically look at the youth of the world and say, hey, it's about hope. You're not always going to get a yes. You're going to get many no's in life. It's about knowing how to move through that and making your dream come true.
We are independent. We are ready for careers. We support our families.
We want to go to college.
We face new challenges.
We have unlimited potential.
We believe in our future. We follow our dreams. We are the leaders of tomorrow. We are Generation Texas.
We are Generation Texas.
We are Generation Texas. I am Generation Texas.
We're HEB. We are Generation Texas.
We are Gen Tech. We are Gen Tech.
We are the leaders of tomorrow. We are Generation Texas.
Thanks, Mary. Thank you. Do you want me to just forward it back to where I was. Great. So thanks for letting me share that with you. It was the fastest way for me to transport you on a magic carpet around the state that day and that week. And we were really excited about it. It was exactly the kind of things that we've always hoped for with the movement, where you see different communities take it on in a spirit and a character that's true to the to that community. And so that was what was really neat about it. I think it was also a great opportunity for us to see how a business partner like HEB could really plug in and scale the movement, and the way that they brought, in a really, they got so excited about it. At first it was just going to be in a couple stores, but then really it went to every store and in all their markets, and that was incredible. And it was a great way to really launch the movement within their 76,000 employee base, which is awesome. And so that's launched a number of discussions about what they can do next and how they can continue to be part of the movement. And it's really created a model that I think we can take forward to other business partners too. So it's been neat to see how the different communities plug in and how people really make it their own. So again, we felt great about it. One of the other things I think that, to Commissioner Prentice's point, that we really learned from it too, and I'm going to show you in some of the plans we have coming up in 2011, 2012, is how we create these kind of focused events throughout the year that allow people, whether it's public education, higher education, business partners, community partners who really want to be part of this, to focus on how they can plug in a very tangible way to certain key parts of the movement. And so that's one of the things I think that's really going to allow those types of things to happen. And of course, we enjoyed quite a bit of, as the video showed you, media, which was a great way, again, to scale the movement and gets more business partners to want to be part of it, because if the message is really getting out there in other ways, that's another way that it brings more folks to the table. So the markets, again, that we're mainly focused on are the high growth areas, Houston, the Metroplex, San Antonio, the Valley, and El Paso, as well as several of the P-16 councils that we work with very closely. So those are ones, and even some of the pictures that you saw, it was pretty cool to get through the Facebook page. Communities were just mailing in and posting the pictures from their schools, and that's where a bunch of those ones were in there. We have a lot more. Actually, if you want to see them all, they're up on the Gentex Facebook page. But that was pretty neat to see all that happening, even in communities we had no idea were taking on Gentex Day. It was pretty neat. Some of the things heading into next year, I wanted to give you some highlights, and in your packet there's a longer version of some of these key messages built out, but one of the things I wanted to highlight for you is that we have been working based on things we've learned throughout the year on what are refinements of some of the main messages we want to take out. And so we're refining some of the materials, some of the things on the website, some of the posters, some of the campus kits, even some of the messages around some of the seasonal themes that we're taking out along the lines of these messages. And like I said, the detailed messages are in your packet, but the key for kind of high-level areas is, one is a message about college, that it is the path to the future you want, and some of the supporting pieces that need to go under that. The second one is you can't get in if you don't apply. And then a lot of the messages around that, around, Apply Texas, how Texas has put that together for folks, and also what you have to do in terms of coursework to be ready to apply to college. And then not letting the cost of college get in the way of your education. That's really the financial aid message and all the pieces that are in place there to help people understand everything from, just financial aid language and terminology to how to pay for college. And then finally, you're in charge of your education, own it. And this really gets to some of the readiness messages that we think are particularly important given a lot of the things going on today. So we've refined some of the messages, and we're actually applying a lot of that to some of the materials right now. This is what I was mentioning about the seasonal promotional focuses. So one of the things that we're going into 2011-2012 school year with as well is these themes, where what we've looked at is that in September, October, we're having what we call a Rock Your Future type of theme, and that's really about, depending on in high school in particular, what grade level you're at, what the focus is there, and that's really about starting to think about applying to college, taking the right tests, visiting college campuses, starting to think about that. So it's about your future, and even if you're a freshman or a sophomore, looking at finding a mentor, creating your brag sheet, going and seeing colleges and starting to think about it, to all the way if you're a senior, making sure that you're applying. And so I think that Rock Your Future, all of the seasonal pushes, it would be great to have any types of partners plug in, but I think in particular that's a great opportunity for a lot of the higher ed partners to really plug in with what's happening in the schools. In January and February, we focus on financial aid and FAFSA, and again, for some of the younger families, even before high school, and certainly freshmen and sophomore, to just start the conversation about learning how to pay for college, all the way up to with the seniors, FAFSA, and actually filling out the form. And then in May, looking at Gentex Day again, which is really this celebration that comes around the time of graduation, organization that really focuses on that message of college, and how can we take advantage of sort of celebrating that and finishing and really getting kids geared up for that. So all of them are opportunities for folks to plug in, but because we're going to have these 3 seasonal kind of pushes, that I think is going to give us a nice framework to work against as we go to work with the schools, higher ed partners, business partners, and different community partners. So that's some high level of what's been going on and some of where we're headed. What I'd really love to do is kind of get into a discussion a little bit about how your organizations and associations can plug in and be part of the movement, ways that we have some specific ideas about that, but I think you know your organizations and needs better than we do, so I'm not going to pretend to know all that. Some of the ideas I have, and then I'd love to just turn it into a discussion, are, first and foremost, just joining the movement, engaging and supporting with the regional P-16 councils have become one of the main convening points for us in terms of bringing public ed, higher ed, and business to the table in each community. So working with those really closely. The calendar is one of the things on the website that we have identified as a gap across the state, that there's no great way within each community for people to know all the things going on in their community. So we put that calendar on GenText, and it's a place where anybody can go add their events that are going on, and it's a great way for families and students to find out what's going on. So encouraging you and all your groups that have initiatives going on that need to be on that calendar to make sure they're up there. Understanding that all the college readiness programs that are already going on are Generation Texas. We're not a program. We're like the culture, the medium, the mindset that wants to bring more folks to those programs and really bring a spotlight to them. Integrating the language and symbols of Generation Texas and really making it yours. We've put together a lot of stories on the website that we know, because we hear over and over again when people use them in schools and events and community presentations, that they're really motivating, inspiring, and they get kids to continue to think that they can do this, and even parents. So using the stories, but also finding the ones in your community and your organizations, how we bring those out more. Certainly in public education, getting the campus kits and seasonal promotions out, those are things that we need to go through the whole path of working through superintendents, principals, counselors to get that all the way through. So anything that you can do to support getting those in would be tremendous for the movement. Whitelisting the website to make sure we can use it in all the schools. In higher ed, co-branding outreach activities and tours, especially all the Rock Your Future activity in the fall. And then of course in business, you saw with HEB how business can really scale the movement, reach people in other places. Engaging those business folks who really, and you heard from a lot of them in the video, want to go and mentor and be that person who says to someone who's going to be a first-generation student, you can do this, I'm going to show you how, let's do it, I'm going to be your mentor. Particularly with the FAFSA and financial aid piece, where chambers are constantly training volunteers to go help folks sit down and fill that form out. Media partnerships, of course, they bring a lot of visibility, and business can bring a lot of those folks to the table, as well as any celebrities that they're already working with who lend their voice to bringing visibility to this movement. So with that, I would love to just engage in questions or ways that your organizations and associations could really be part of this, or questions you might have about how you could be part of it.
Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Is this material available in Spanish, and the website available in Spanish?
It is, yes. There's a whole section on the website with Spanish content, and even a lot of the videos, there's a number of videos that are only in Spanish, and so all the materials are available in Spanish also.
Because one of the misconceptions a lot of parents have in making presentations in Spanish in some of the forums is, though, one, they don't understand the FAFSA, and two, they don't think there's financial aid available.
Right.
And so they also don't understand the timeline of when students should be applying to college or thinking about college or preparing by taking the right courses. So I think that's another very important part that's parallel. So we try to work with community organizations. We're working with Univision, for example, on doing community forums in Spanish for them.
Yeah.
Have you made a presentation to the Council of University Presidents and Chancellors?
We have not, no.
We should help arrange that so that all the it's a group that meets usually the evening before we have coordinating board meetings.
Okay.
So they will meet, for example,
Next week.
next Wednesday, although it's probably too late to get on the agenda for that meeting, but we can certainly arrange for you to make a presentation. And it's usually attended, but there are usually, what, Bill, 25 people there? Around, so about 25 of the 38 university presidents in the state, public university presidents are there. I would venture that there would be a lot of presidents would be interested in promoting Gentex in their communities. We can arrange for you to make a presentation to the Texas Association of Community Colleges, which also represents that particular segment of higher education. And I think they would be equally interested in supporting you and generating attention in their communities around this issue of going to college. You talked about working with chambers. What chambers of commerce? What exactly how has that cooperation worked? And maybe Phyllis could respond to some of the things you've already done and maybe help expand your range of operations.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting as we go into a market to kind of see who the early adopters are, or who the people that are currently kind of working in the space. And chambers have been extremely active in terms of figuring out how they can partner with high schools, with higher ed to really make an impact. So, for example, in El Paso, the Greater Chamber of El Paso was the first one to really step up and say, this is something that we want to take to our entire city. So we worked with them, along with the mayor, to address the state of the city. And Generation Texas was an integral part of his presentation to that business audience. So from this point forward, they are one of our anchor partners in terms of working with the school districts within El Paso. So, I mean, that's been very nice to kind of see how they have definitely adopted it. They are anxious to look for content that they can share with their members, that they can tell them how they can get involved and how they can support their schools. And I think Generation Texas provides that connection to the resource. So that's kind of been the biggest example of chamber support.
I actually spoke to someone at Generation Tech last year and offered to have them come to our annual conference this summer, and then I didn't hear back, but I would love to have that next summer. I mean, you got 300 chamber people there, and they're from little ones, big ones, all over the state, and it just continues to grow, and we had 40-something vendors. I mean, it would be a great booth over the 3 or 4 day period, but they're there to refresh, renew, and get new ideas and take them back, and we have that education piece with those people talking about how important it is. And there are some that are doing it really well and have the resources, but there's a lot of them doing very grassroots stuff. And just, I think why they didn't get back was I was trying to figure out, there wasn't any way for Generation Tech to take it out to a community, and if the community didn't have the funds to pay for everything, and there wasn't yet a package where you could say, this is how you buy the buttons and how you get this and you get that, and we needed to be able to take it to them and say, here's some sample, here's some steps of what you need to do. And I am more than willing to work with you guys to make that happen. Drew at the Austin Chamber and I have worked together for years, and he's just got some real practical ways, to take those messages. And a lot of them are looking for that. They want the glitz and the glamour and the pretty stuff because it makes it more real when they take it to their board and sell it to their business people. But they've got the stuff in place. They've got the businesses that want to do it. They've got mentoring programs. They've got all that stuff, and so they're a logical place to reach out to. And HEB's a member of every chamber in the state.
Well, and I think that's a good, Drew is a great example, and even the model that has gone on with the Austin Chamber around financial aid Saturdays, and the training is something as we've mentioned it to other communities, they're interested in that, and I think that also could be a model for, one of the things we're in conversation with HEB about is whether some of that can go on in their stores, because it's a place that people come all the time, and so we've talked about that. So I think there could be a big partnership there to talk about chambers training the volunteers to help fill out those forms, having some of it happen at HEB, and putting a whole program together that way too. So, and it could be different things in different communities, but
and that's why I think this summer when we do our annual conference is a really good time, because when school starts, they need to already have figured out what they're going to do and start getting engaged. Because I think it doesn't really matter when you do a college wear your T-shirt day, But if you're going to really do a campaign where you're going to be effective, you need to start really early in the school year so that they have time to actually do something with that information. You get them all excited about it, and they graduate the next week. They haven't filled out the FAFSA or done anything yet. You have to start all that in the fall. So, so we started pushing a lot of our stuff to earlier when I was doing chamber stuff and earlier in the year, so we would have time to then, and the FAFSA, just doing those FAFSA Saturdays. I mean, you can double, triple, 100% increase in the number of submissions, and that can have a big impact on how many are going. And it's with the Hispanic students largely. The families it's overwhelming. I mean, I went to the FAFSA training. I was overwhelmed. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
And so, if you've got people there helping them, I think it really helps a lot. So anyway, I'll help you any way I can.
Well, thank you.
It'd be great.
As we were putting the calendar together, we were definitely thinking of the chambers during that FAFSA seasonal push, so we would definitely welcome to follow up on that.
And if there's not funding for the annual conference next year, then let me figure out a way to get a business like HEB or somebody. I'll go talk to them. I mean, maybe they'll sponsor getting you there so that we can do that,
Yeah, that'd be great.
Make it happen.
Thank you.
Let me ask another question that's relevant. We know that 80% of students go to college specifically to get a job. And we know that we don't provide students enough accurate information about where the jobs are. Have you worked very closely with the Texas Workforce Commission, regional workforce development groups and so forth, and what could the Texas Workforce Commission, here's the executive director right here, how could we link up Gentex more closely with TWC and the work it does?
Well, I mean, some of the ideas I have, and I'd love to know what ideas you may have too, are that we have a section of the website where we build a lot of materials called Learn More, Earn More, and we've built these career path charts that sort of show people, in how much time, how much more money they could be making, in terms of certain career paths. And that's been a really popular piece that we've both put in campus kits, and it's up in the download center. People can download it. But I think, we've used actually a lot of the Texas Workforce Commission data to put those pieces together. But I think it would be fantastic to learn more about trends that you're seeing in positions and what other charts we should make, like guiding us on what professions and career paths we could be making, even featuring certain ones that you feel like we should be emphasizing more.
Well, the author of all of those good things just walked in, Rich Rochelle. Rich doesn't need a microphone. Rich, would you stand up and tell them some of the things that we have in the can, if you will?
Well, we need you to come up because this is being webcast.
Well, they can hear him all over the state. Come on up, Rich.
You'll get a mouthful of me a little later on here.
Yes, we know that, but
I'd be happy to. I'm Rich Rochelle. I'm the director of the Labor Market and Career Information Department at TWC, and we worry about a lot of the same things that you're talking about in terms of where the jobs are, where the jobs are, what the job patterns are, what industries, what occupations we see growing and which ones declining, both short-term and longer-term trends. And those are things we worry about on a day-to-day basis. We also look at the connections between labor supply and labor demand, and look at various programs that relate to specific occupations that are in the labor market. And of course, one of our biggest challenges, and I know, Dr. Perez, we had this conversation before, and that is that students acquire a lot of skills in certain programs that don't have a direct occupation to program match. And so we really at the Workforce Commission are trying to spend a lot of our time trying to communicate the fact that employers are looking for people with specific skills, and there are a lot of educational programs where those skills are being communicated, but the labor exchange function really at the occupation and program level is not necessarily helping us. So supply, old line supply demand matching is not necessarily the best way for us to think about that. So we're doing a lot of work with your staff at the Workforce Commission, even our own labor exchange process, and trying to think through what kind of skills are kids getting in these various programs, and are those particular skills in significant demand in the labor market. So a lot of the things that you'll see coming out of us will be the skill-to-skill match. Because guess what? Even though some of us rail on psychology graduates, they pick up a lot of skills along the way. They just don't know how to communicate them into the labor market and which occupations and job openings in the labor market.
And Rich,
so
we're working on that, some of the products
exchange
that we have that we provide to counselors and to schools, and what we have on our own website.
Our primary vehicle for this is Texas Cares Online, which is our free career information development system. It's built around the world of work and the world of learning, and we allow kids to go in and think about lots of different occupations and then see what programs are related to that and where they're being offered and what the costs are. Or to say, I want to go to Angelo State or the University of Texas at Austin and see what programs they offer and go back and forth. So a continuous sort of recursive view of looking at the world of work and the world of learning and how those interact. All the way to, are there any job openings currently available and which employers would they be? So we include all of that in our Texas Cares online system. And then another one that's also very popular, in fact, it's the most popular system that I think we have at the Workforce Commission, is called Reality Check, is letting people get a sense of, if you want to aspire to this particular lifestyle, what does that cost me? And what kind of occupations would allow me to earn the kind of living that would allow me to afford that lifestyle? And it just so happens we've had that program out for about 5 years. Sometime around mid-late September, we'll have a brand new edition of that on the street with all updated data, some new regions, and I think some some brand new features I think we'll all like. So those are our two primary tools that are related to helping kids, and then we have a whole host of publications that are built around the job search process or becoming better employees. One of them is just called Succeed at Work. One of the things that I think the education system doesn't spend a lot of time on is worrying about something that we all call workplace basics or workplace fundamentals. That's being able to demonstrate a commitment to the workplace, play well with others in the sandbox, show a dedication, show work ethic, be able to work on time, show up on time, all those kinds of things. And I was at the Career and Technology Conference yesterday up in Dallas, and we spent a lot of time about who's taking ownership for workplace basics in addition to basic academics and occupational skills. So that's Succeed at Work. That's one of our publications. We have Job Hunter's Guide. We have a number of things that are also related to our tabloids, Career Investigation for middle school, Career Investigation for middle school, and Career Success for high school. So all of those things are designed to help students make informed choices about their labor market alternatives. Is that more than what you ever wanted to know?
There's a rich opportunity for partnership. I've always been concerned, once again, this is something that Kat and I have spoken about, that the notion of a college-going culture, going to college is something of an abstraction for a lot of kids. They like the idea of going to college. They know that it's something they should consider, but it's not tangible and palpable enough for them to make decisions about when there's not a whole lot else in their environment that emphasizes the idea of getting an education. And the idea of tying college specifically to jobs in a way that, and I've seen your materials and your website, that it does so well, I think would really strengthen the Generation Texas movement.
And if there's one piece that I really would like to see that connection to, it is the reality check. Yeah. It is getting kids to understand that there's a reason why you go to college, is if you have these lifestyle aspirations, in order to get there, there are certain paths that will get you there and certain paths that just won't get you there. And that reality check in terms of drawing that connection between your education and your lifestyle, I think is a really important one and could be very important for this particular effort as well.
Can I say, and I agree with that, but I think that particular messaging has been, the last few years, that's been kind of the messaging that's been out there, and I think they're figuring it out. But I'm the mother of 3 teenagers in addition to being on all this, so I get to hear what they talk about. And I showed them the CD, and I'm going to show it to them again, but they don't get it at school. So somehow we've got to get that to them, because they know they want to go to school. And, my kids know they have to, but they still can't figure out what it is they want to be. They've been given that personality test, and it's got everything from an astronaut to a lawyer to, these are all the things you could be good at doing, and they have no idea what any of those mean, or, and you're and trying to translate that for them. And if there's some way you could go from getting a kid excited about school to having them figure out what the heck they want to be when they get out, so they know even which school to pick.
Right.
I mean, my daughter's number 8 in her class, and she can't figure out what school to pick, or if she wants to be an engineer or an accountant, or, any of the top 10 things they said she should be, which could be 15 different schools she should pick for those. So.
Well, unfortunately, and one of the things that we're also running into along those exact same lines is if they don't get any focus, so that we can't at least narrow them in some way, They're still interested in going to school. They go to college. They study whatever is of interest to them. They graduate. They have debts, and they have maybe studied something of interest that has no labor market relevance, which I'm all for having a more erudite citizenry, don't get me wrong. But there is a place where there are expectations that if you're going to earn a living on the backside and you majored in certain things, that there are different labor market outcomes that are related to certain programs of study. That is a reality of the labor market, and we don't communicate that particularly well.
That would be my biggie, is if you could just help them see that. And give them an iPhone app, because they all have iPhones, even if they don't have a computer.
John, and then...
So first, I was around, I think, in 2001 for the GO campaign, and just really want to compliment you, Commissioner Paredes, on the vision of the coordinating board, and particularly your decision to outsource this and work with a private sector
Well,
firm.
it wasn't my decision. I listened to the good advice. Where's Dr. Laredo? There she is, right in the back.
Well, knowing Dr. Loretto, I'm not surprised, Judy, that this was your great idea. And then to Kat, just from having met with you, a year and a half or 2 years ago when this has started, just incredibly impressive, and just a real credit to you and your team. And it was amazing just to see all the different activities, and then the media hits and the in-kind. So this is just really impressive as someone who was around a decade ago for a mixed success track record, and just to see this. So this is incredible. So a couple ideas. There's a series of philanthropic initiatives that are looking at college access. Most of the things that we've been involved in have been more focused on college readiness. There's an increasing portfolio that's looking at college success and college completion. There's the National College Access Network, or NCAN, which is a group funded primarily by the Kresge Foundation, which is the former Walmart folks that we're working with, looking at sort of a statewide college access campaign. The Lumina Foundation is working on a Latino Success Initiative, and there'll probably be sort of 1 to 3 of those in Texas. And then there's different local initiatives that are being funded, by the Houston Endowment in the Gulf Coast, by the Meadows Foundation in Dallas. So I'd be happy to connect with you offline, but I think there's a lot of synergy between a lot of the activities that you're doing and what at least the goals and objectives of some of these philanthropic initiatives are. That's the first one. The second one, I just want to applaud you. It looked like you had at least 2 or 3 mayors involved, and I think there's a real challenge between mayors' interest in getting involved in education and their powerful platform to connect education and economic development with the lack of any sort of statutory or sort of official role with which to do that. And I think the bully pulpit that Generation Texas provides is actually just an amazing place for mayors to click into. I think there's also some things we can maybe do to connect to you. Like we do some work with the National Association of Latino Elected Officials. And so I think just seeing Mayor Castro there. I also think, and I see my friend Andrew Kim, superintendent in Manor, there's a lot of innovative superintendents like Andrew, who I think would be really interested in learning more about Generation Texas. There's 2 big conferences that superintendents go to, sponsored by the Texas Association of School Administrators. One is in September, one is in January. And then I think, as a former school board member, sometimes school board members struggle with what are the right things for them to get involved with. Again, I think this would be a great platform for school board members to work with you on the fall, winter, spring calendar. And then the other thing I would just offer, just organizationally, we work with a whole series of STEM academies and charter schools and early college high schools, and if we can be helpful just for these 100 or so college-ready campuses, many of which are in Far Sandal and Alamo, if we can help connect you with the superintendents and the campuses for those, we'd be happy to do that.
Cool. Thanks.
That's critical. We know that this campaign will not be more than an abstraction if we don't connect the actual campaign and the message to what happens in the schools. Mm-hmm. And so I'd love to hear from Daniel as well as, since you're here, Superintendent Kim, why don't you come up to the, I hate to put you on the spot, but we'd like some ideas about how we can connect the Generation Texas campaign to what is actually occurring in schools.
Well, thank you for that introduction. I appreciate it very much. I wasn't really prepared for this, but I actually visited with Milkshake. I believe it was the firm that created the Gentex movement, and was really interested in their efforts. And of course, heard from various colleagues in the Houston area and the San Antonio area about this effort. I think that one, we sure would love to see, from our vantage point, an earlier start, even down to the elementary level. And I think that, as you mentioned, Dr. Paredes, the connection with elementary education in terms of that college readiness effort needs to be drilled down to that level. I know that there's also a conference with the elementary principals every year in Austin. I think that's somewhere I think the principals really need to get involved. And all of you know that principals are the key to getting things on board on the campuses to push out things. And I think there's a lot of effort to do that. And also I think that when we look at how students are moving into transition from elementary to middle schools or junior high level for that matter, that we need to have a lot more focus in those transition years about this effort. And I think if there is a lot more of that awareness campaign, that will surely help our efforts to tie in our own activities that are happening in our own school districts to really meet up with this statewide effort. There's no doubt that school districts like PSJA and others, as well as Maynard Independent School District, are engaged in college readiness activities. But it sure would be nice to sort of connect and tie all those things to coordinate those with this effort. And we might even see some possible financial savings as a result of that if we're not duplicating some efforts. Because I'll tell you from our end, branding or advertising or marketing is our weakness in terms of what we do as a school district. We weren't trained for that, at least in my studies, of how to go about doing that. So I think that's a big effort in terms of making that work. We have our own college readiness specialists and directors in our own school districts. I think that it would be also prudent to invite a collection of those directors at various school districts that are overseeing now specialized college readiness efforts to meet as some sort of an advising council or a group that really goes through that. I know the regional service centers also has some point of contact with counselors and college readiness coordinators at various campuses and district-wide support. And I think that will be a very good effort there as well, too.
That's great. Do you have anything to add to that?
Very much in line with what he said in a lot of ways, and that's that, there's a lot of initiatives going on, there's a lot of valuable information, and I think what could make a lot of this a lot more powerful is the more that we can link and align. And so, for example, even linking from the Gentex website to the Workforce Commission to those particular, especially those particular key components. I'm sitting here thinking that our school district website, we need to link, to some of these things. But also, as he mentioned, the regional service centers, especially in the key market areas, have typically monthly meetings of superintendents, of counselors, of people like that. That would be good places to present. But another one, I think, maybe to consider adding to the campaign. Today's younger generation phenomenon in the last, I guess, 2 to 3 years is that they actually live on Facebook, and so, if creating a Gentex Facebook, if that has not been done or hasn't been working on it, and then having a campaign for kids to friend Gentex, so that they're getting regular updates and messages at the appropriate times of the year. The kids pay attention to all that stuff that's coming out on like I said, they literally live there, as much as they can, and so that's a lot of times we're doing. That's one of the things we're learning. A lot of times we're doing web page and we're doing emailing and stuff, and we found. I know some of our colleges and talking to them, a lot of the colleges set up kids with email accounts, and what I'm hearing is a lot of the college students don't even check their email accounts, but if you make a Facebook connection with them, they know exactly what's going on. So in some ways, keeping up with the way young people communicate today, TV stations and commercials, kids today, they change channels, 20 times in 30 minutes, and they skip commercials and they skip, and if the show gets a little boring, they're already on into the next show, and and they're on their, they're on their Facebook cell phone at the same time and stuff like that. So just thinking of those things, but I think the two main things is really we have so much good information in these different organizations, and we should probably all be thinking about how to link, because so often maybe what somebody in the rehabilitative needs information on is on the workforce website and vice versa, and the education, and we can all align that. And so that's one, and then just thinking of how to get that communication out, and like I said, what do young people today pay attention to and listen to, and where do they spend their time? So
there was a recommendation that was made at I think it was a meeting of the San Antonio Educational Partnership that I happened to attend that I thought was great. I don't know if it's implementable, and I know how tight the schedules in public schools are, but the recommendation was that it would be great if every public school in Texas, elementary, middle, and high school, could devote, say, 5 or 10 minutes a day or 3 or 4 times a week to the issue of going to college, where the kids in some particular class at the beginning of the day would talk about going to college, where they wanted to go, why they wanted to go, and just have a conversation among themselves and with their teachers about this issue. And just having that kind of conversation on a regular basis, as I said, maybe not every day, but maybe 3 times a day, maybe once a week for 10 minutes. It begins to create a set of expectations that I think would drive everything else that goes in the school. If children, particularly very young children, are already dreaming big, then that will require the institutions to respond to those big dreams.
Well, if I can say one more thing, just piggybacking on what you just said, we're working with some of our nonprofit organizations like Breakthrough, as well as College Forward, that's actually now working with Maynard Independent School District. And we've been asking them to redirect their focus down to that lower levels. But I think a better way to connect with all of those providers so that it is not a sort of segregated activities that are happening about College Ready, but there is a sort of a coordinated effort would be, I think, very great. And I think to add to what you said in terms of the value, I think, and going back to what John said earlier about STEM education, and we have a high school in the Maynard Independent School District that has done well. In fact, we've been nationally recognized at this particular point with 97% of our students going to college, with 67% of the students are first-generation college-going students. That sense of going to college is a part of the culture because it is also embedded within the curriculum. And I think at some point there's got to be a connection to let's have an opportunity to go to college with the work that we're doing in terms of the curriculum work. And if that can be somewhat put together as part of the cultural enhancement of the curriculum that the New Technology High School has, for example, have done, and as well as some of the schools that Asia Society has promoted, as well as the Yes Prep Academy and others, I think that will provide an environment where what you're asking for, it will be better utilized.
Deborah, what can we do to respond more effectively to your young constituents?
Well, I can think of one thing, but I wanted to say that, in a lot of ways, this is a public, messaging campaign, and I think that's important, but one of the things that we can offer, and I'd really like to connect you with our transition counselors, is that, we're working with young students in high school every day, and we can connect this message and this campaign to a counselor working with individual students on their plans for post-secondary education. So I think that we can translate it in a real concrete kind of way. That said, I think it's going to be important for your materials in your campaign to show young people with disabilities, and they need to see themselves in this as well, and they should be. So I think to the extent that you can
that you can include some young people with disabilities, a white cane, a wheelchair, something visual where they see themselves. I think that would be real important. The other thing, and this may be more long-term for you all to think about, but the extent to which your materials are accessible.
Yep. And I know our website was designed for Web Content Accessibility Guide 2 with Level A, and we've been working with your staff actually to review it and make sure that it is truly accessible. So
that's excellent. Thank you.
Couple of final comments, then we'll move on. John?
Just to your point about connecting effectively with K through 12, part of my advice would be to segment the market, because it's just so overwhelming to try to figure out, 1,056 school districts. There's probably 30 to 50 superintendents that are like Andrew Kim and Danny King, and they're, similar number, maybe 300, principals. And so it's trying to find the early adopters that are going to jump on this. And that's sort of the rifle shot solution. I think for more of the shotgun, every school district has a counseling department and a media department. And I think the counseling departments are going to understand this, and it's an easy platform for the content. But they're going to have very different levels of execution, on how well they do it. And most districts of, moderate to large size have either a cable TV station or a website or some sort of way where they're looking for content. I mean, you see what's on some of the stations, and it's very mixed how good the content is. And then the third thing, and just Andrew's comment made me think of it, part of what is being surfaced with all these philanthropic grants are the nonprofits that focus on college access. So the college forwards of the world, they've got, it's sort of the equivalent of communities and schools. They're just folks that do very hands-on work in college access. And those are doing this, and I think it's more in large urban communities than it is in South Texas or on the Texas-Mexico border, where we do a lot of work. But those are just, in my head, sort of 3 ways to try to think about when you're doing your K through 12 outreach.
Great. Thank you. Excellent. Great.
Any other comments?
The only other thing I just wanted to say, too, is we definitely have a Gentex Facebook page, so please go friend it and send everyone you know to it. It actually was amazing on Gentex Day. The post views, I think because people were so excited to put their pictures up there, went up 300% like that week. So it was incredible to watch. So everything you say, Superintendent King, is true about that, and the kids, it's definitely a way to get to them. Also, the ESCs have been a great way for us, especially to do counselor training, so we will continue that. It's great to hear you bring that up as well.
Well, thank you very much. Kat, every time you talk about Gen Texas, it's gotten bigger and better, so thank you.
Tends to happen. Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
And
thank you very much.
Kim, thank you for responding to my spontaneous invitation.
No, thank you very much.
This is exciting, but it's going to require the cooperation of all the segments that are represented around this conference table. This looks like Advise Texas.
It sure does.
Okay, Matt, are you
I am
one?
Steering, but I will fly through a presentation on what Advise Texas is for the new members. The commissioner and others are familiar with that. First of all, thank you for inviting me here, commissioners. It's a real pleasure to talk to you about Advise Texas. We brought some advisors here. I'm Matt Orem. I'm the Director for College Access at the Institute for Public School Initiatives, which is part of the College of Education and which is at UT Austin. So we are part of that college. We are a separate institute that concentrates on the P-16 pipeline. So I'll let the advisors introduce themselves and then do a song and dance about Advise Texas.
Hi everyone, my name is Chris Edwards. That's just a little loud. I am a college advisor. I'm returning this year. I worked for the organization for a year already. I worked at Worthing High School in Houston. I graduated from UT last May, and I graduated in rhetoric and writing and English.
My name is Jacob Peach. I also graduated from UT May 2010, and I was a college advisor at Westbury High School in Houston this last year, and I was a rhetoric and writing major as well.
Hi, I'm Allison Nahara. I'm a returning advisor as well. I served in San Antonio at Thomas Jefferson High School, and I graduated last May with a degree in communication studies.
And before we go one step further, we should let everybody know that this isn't exclusively a UT Austin activity anymore. So
that's correct. So we have joined forces with Texas A&M, TCU, and Trinity University for this next year. So, okay, that is loud, isn't it? So, so the National College Advising Corps, which Advise Texas is a part of, has the mission that is your mission, but what we do is we provide capacity, we provide humans, we provide talented, enthusiastic college advisors to every community that wants them and to every student who needs them. So this is part of a national consortium of colleges focused on increasing the number of low-income, first-generation, underrepresented students entering and completing higher education. And Advise Texas is part of the National College Advising Corps. The National College Advising Corps was founded in 2005 by Dr. Nicole Hurd. She was actually at UVA at the time. The central office has moved to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. It expanded to 10 other states with a $10 million gift from the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation, and has recently received sustaining support from public and private sources, including the recent award from the Social Innovation Fund from the U.S. Department of Education, which was a highly competitive program looking at new game-changing initiatives. The current institutional partners are in 17 institutions in 14 states, and Texas has just, of course, this year has added several institutions to the map. Last year, we were glad to make the program green. So here we are. This is the steady growth since 2005 in the numbers of advisors of the program. 10-11 was the first year for Texas to participate in this program, and 11-12, that growth you see there will almost all be made up of Texas advisors. What they do is what you've been talking about students needing when they need that on-the-ground support. So what they do every day, all day, full-time. So 40 hours a week, they live in the communities in which they serve. They work in these schools on an 8 to 5 schedule, sometimes weekends and evenings. They do college searches. They help students find those best fit institutions. They help students to maybe look at institutions in broader options than they would have considered or as just historical to their school. They work in groups, they work one-on-one, they work on SATs, and they work on test prep. They do college campus visits, they do fairs, they do work with parents, they do classroom visits. They reach them in any way they can. They work creatively within the school. Importantly, they're employed by the universities who also hire and train them. So we protect their time. We have an MOU with each district that we serve that says what they can and can't do in a school. And so they cannot be called in for doing hall monitoring. They cannot do cafeteria duty. They cannot do test administration. They are protected college advisors in the school working full time. So Advise Texas this last year had 15 advisors. We received funds from Bank of America, from the Texas Guaranteed, and from the Higher Education Coordinating Board to start this program originally at UT Austin in these 15 schools in these 3 regions. The idea was to get a nice diverse group of regions and locations and types of schools so that we could really see how the model would scale into the different types and kinds of institutions. And we've learned huge lessons as we've done this first year, and they're here to tell you about some of those. So in San Antonio, 4 districts and 5 schools. Houston, 1 large urban district where some of these advisors are almost an hour from each other but are within the same district, HISD. And then 2 schools down in the Rio Grande Valley, including PSJA Memorial and Edinburgh North. So they've been extremely busy. This 40 hours a week, what they can get done, what a 21, 22-year-old can get done in 40 hours a week is just outstanding. They've reached tens of thousands of students, one-on-one meetings. So these may be duplicated, but almost 31,000 one-on-one meetings during the course of their 10 months in a school. What we saw was at the end of June, when we took the numbers, we saw a 16% overall increase in, that should say applicants, not applications, so that's numbers of students applying over the same schools last year. When we took that same figure in October, that was a 132% increase over the previous year. What that means is they advanced the timeline for hundreds of students. Advancing the timeline for these students means several things. It means they send in more applications per student, they apply to more colleges, they apply earlier for financial aid, they apply earlier for scholarships, they have a greater acceptance rate to highly selective institutions, which will serve them well. So the other things they've done is SAT, FAFSA, classroom visits, college campus visits. Almost 6,000 students visited a college campus because our advisor was on that campus. And we suspect that those students would not have visited campuses without our advisor there to set that up. So we know that those numbers mean something, but the college culture piece, what Milkshake talks about, that piece is also profound and lasting beyond just the time the advisor is in the school and down into the community and with their parents. And here's a quote from a principal who somebody said the importance of principals, that advisor in that school has really made a huge shift in the college culture of Barbara Jordan High School. Again, in 10 months, a very short period of time. They are not in school reform business. They lead by example. They lead by being an example of a recent college graduate, someone who just made it out in 4 years, who did it. So with that, they bring their enthusiasm, and as this counselor said, of Allison, actually, that she brought the light back into the high school. This is the real news. With the support of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board and in partnership with other institutions of higher education, we are expanding to 120 schools this next year. Quickly, 418 schools were invited. We actually used our relationship with the TEA to do this invitation and to help select that list of 418 schools. Robert Scott sent out a personal invitation to the schools with Advise Texas. The TEA also sent a press release. We knew that sending a press release from the University of Texas, or even with apologies to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, was maybe not the best way to get the attention of the schools, that the schools did watch what came out from the TEA. This generated a lot of interest. We had 266 schools apply from 128 districts. We had about 17 schools write in to be considered that were not sent invitations to apply. So what that told us, this was in the middle is Matt holding his breath to see whether or not they would want us, because we had this goal of reaching 128 schools, and it was clear the first 2 days after the invitation went out that we were going to have the numbers we needed. So the difficult part was selecting the final 120. We used a mixed method of need and a randomized selection process with our evaluator from Stanford University to allow us for basically the gold standard in evaluation. Because we had so many applicants, we were able to do a selected randomized process for some schools who were equal and set up a true control group to study the program. Just a quick note, we are not serving Juarez. That's El Paso. I don't know why Google Map, when you pull up Google Maps, it labels El Paso Juarez instead of El Paso. But you can see that they're spread far and wide. We are not yet in the Panhandle and Permian Basin areas, but I think there is already demand for us to look at those areas in the future. Again, these are the chapters. UT Austin has successfully, and all the chapters have successfully this year recruited, and now we're in our third week of training. They've hired, and they complete a third week of training. They do a bus tour of colleges and universities statewide starting next week. UT Austin will have 64 advisors. Texas A&M will have 32. Texas Christian will have 16. Trinity University will have 8. Sometimes different universities are serving the same district, and that's the case in Dallas. And so the Aggies and us are sharing districts. The Aggies and TCU are sharing districts. Trinity actually will be, and actually Trinity and UT I think are sharing some districts. So we have many partners and supporters, the most important of which has been through the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board and the College Access Challenge Grant. As I said, it is a public-private partnership where the private funding is wholly dependent on that public support, I would say. So Bank of America, Texas Guaranteed, we have added some New York Life, Rackspace Foundation in San Antonio to the table, so businesses and others in communities are interested in actually picking up a school to sponsor in their school. Generation Texas has been a partner from the start. The advisors have worked with them. They've provided important on-the-ground feedback to the program. I have a weekly meeting with Milkshake on the Generation Texas campaign and how Advise Texas can help roll this out on the ground. So that's enough for me. I think the real folks to talk to are the advisors, and particularly I know that Commissioner Paredes asked us to bring we wanted to talk about some of their successes, but also some of the barriers that they faced in their schools and the issues that they said they saw on the ground that were preventing their students from reaching their full potential or getting or achieving in higher education. So if there's any questions of me, I'll turn it over to Jake or
Chris. I'm going to start. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we wanted to talk about some of the successes we've had at the school, and I'm going to tell you a personal story that I had with a girl named Clarabelle. On the first day of school, I spent most of my time going into different classrooms and talking to the students and meeting with them and just kind of getting the word out that I was even there. During lunchtime, I was sitting in the College Go Center, and a girl walked in, and she introduced herself. She said her name was Clarabelle, and she also told me right then that I wasn't going to remember her name. And I said, of course I'm going to remember your name. And we continued the discussion, and I kind of said, you know, I'm here to help you go to college, and I kind of discussed what that meant. And as she left, she goes, what's my name? I said, Clarabelle. And over the course of the next few weeks, I kind of met with her and I learned who she was, and I found out that she came from a very poor family. She didn't have any plans of going to college. She did have big dreams. She wanted to be a veterinarian. She wanted to be an actress. But she didn't have any plans because she couldn't pay for it, or so she thought. And so I talked to her over, again, the course of a few weeks, and we talked about financial aid and how she could get funding to go to college and how her grades were where they needed to be, and we talked about the different options that she had. And in fact, she was doing very well. She was in, I think, the top 10% of her class, and she could go to college. And she had applied to, by the time we were done, she had applied to Texas A&M and UT and a number of other institutions. And another story is one time during a parent-teacher conference, her parents came in, and her parents do not speak English. And I can speak a little Spanish. It's a little broken, I won't lie. But I talked to her dad, and in my broken Spanish and having her help us translate, I talked to him about financial aid and how there were options available for his girl. and how she could go to college if she wanted to, and if that's what her family and she wanted to do. And we talked for a long time, and after the discussion, he told me, "Thank you so much for your time. If I hadn't talked to you, I wasn't on board with this." She said that she could go, but if I hadn't talked to you, then I didn't think that this could happen. He said that in Spanish, but. And so basically, long story short, she's now going to Texas A&M, and she's going to major in veterinary science. So she's come a long way. And it's,
yeah, one of the other great things we get to do as advisors is plan programs and events at night or on the weekends to engage parents and engage the community and families. And one of the things, when I first got there, we planned to have a parent night, like a junior-senior parent night. I think it was in October. So we planned it. We had food. We had a great speaker coming, and we had 12 parents show up. And you know, it happens, and those 12 parents felt really informed when they left, and it was great. So afterwards, me and the counselors, we kind of reevaluated, and we said, okay, we got to do something else. And so we have a dress code at our school, and we thought, okay, well, what if we let the kids that come have a free dress day if they bring their parents, because the kids loved having free dress days. So we advertised a lot, we made announcements, and then in November we had it was just juniors, a junior parent night, and we had 200 parents show up because the kids got to have a free dress day. But it was incredible. The parents walked away with a ton of information. We were not expecting 200 parents. I mean, that's half the junior class. And so, I mean, it opened the door for tons of conversations with parents, and since then, they've been coming in a lot, and I've been getting emails and phone calls, and is he on top of this? Has she signed up for her SAT? And so we get to do things like that in the school that the counselors don't have the time to set up and execute. And so that's a great success story that happened this past year.
Another thing that we get to do is manage some projects at the school, identify and try to alleviate barriers that the students may face in going to college. I found when I got to my school, in the first couple of weeks when I had seniors coming in to talk to me about their college plans, and I was working with students in groups, that I would ask students about their academic standing, and they really didn't have any conception or idea of where they stood in their class. And I would ask students, well, do you know what your GPA is like? No. Do you know what your rank is like? Oh, no, they tell us that in about October. And I was like, okay, well, what was it last year, just so I have a reference point? Oh, they don't tell anyone that's not a senior. And so it was really difficult until about October 28th when the students I believe that was the date that the students got their ranks. It was hard to have a realistic conversation about students' options and where their testing scores needed to be at for the schools they were considering. So one of my big projects that was important to me was working with the registrar to get ranks out to the students. The policy at the time was that they were only required to rank the seniors. So the seniors did receive their ranks in October, but I didn't want the same thing to happen to the juniors and sophomores and freshmen that were at the school. And even from the first week of school in the assemblies that I attended and spoke at, the counselors did emphasize the importance of your GPA in college admissions, but the students didn't really have a reference point to what their GPA was or how their grades every semester were affecting it. They were just told it's very important. And so I, by hand, went through, I had to make a spreadsheet and put in each student's GPA and rank them according to the way the district does. When I released it, since I'm not a registrar, I had to safeguard it and say this is an unofficial ranking from the Go Center that is estimated and will change before the time of your graduation. And I printed and cut by hand about 1,500 when you take the seniors out sheets of paper, and had to staple them closed because they each had to remain confidential to the student, and distributed them in their so I had to alphabetize them also and distribute them in their advocacy classes. So it was a big project. The first time it took me about 2 weeks, but after for the juniors, but once I had a system down, I did the other ones in about 2 days each. For the other classes, it made a huge difference. Suddenly, I ranked the juniors at the end of the first semester, and I started seeing my amount of traffic that came through the Go Center that was juniors significantly increased, and they all wanted to pick up the college brochures and look at the different resources that I had, and wanted to know how they could get their GPA up and what the AP classes were that the school offered, and even down to the freshmen, because I wanted them to know, that was the students who still had the most chance to change their GPA. So I got them their ranks second semester in about February, and I had so many teachers tell me that all year They didn't have any students coming to their after-school tutoring sessions, and suddenly teachers were telling me that they had kids coming in wanting to know how they could make up work and what they needed to do to get their grades up to improve their GPA. And one of the freshman teachers told me that her students in her class asked if they could use her tape because they wanted to tape their ranks and GPAs onto their shirts and wear them around that day. So it was very exciting, and one of the things that I think is really fascinating about that is even beyond my 2 years of service, when I won't be at that school, freshmen that are at that school now, by the time they graduate, that'll still be affecting their college going process. So beyond the individual stories, which are so meaningful, we also are having long-term impact in the schools that we're serving. And so those are the successes that we wanted to discuss, just to give you a range of those. But we also wanted to talk about some of the barriers that we faced. I'm going to use my story to transition into one of those consistent barriers based on our collective experience of the first 15 that went through these schools, was students' awareness of their academic standing and access to their transcripts. We've talked a lot today about the importance of students understanding the message and setting the expectation of going to college, but we believe that that could be better sustained if schools have action items that will help them implement that process and facilitate it. So for example, a policy that only allows seniors to receive their class rankings leaves students until 2 to 3 months into their senior year lacking information that they need to make decisions about the types of schools they'd like to attend. I think that's a very difficult barrier. In the actual college application process, a lot of us have encountered that the turnaround time for schools to send transcripts often presents a problem to students. We tell the students all we can, the policy is 10 days, 10 school days to get one in. A lot of schools, I believe, are supposed to be operating on T-Rex and have it, but I found at my school that we were still running on the paper system. And that prevents some students from getting their transcripts into institutions in time for their application deadlines. We tried to alleviate that as much as we could by bringing those expectations up, and you can see we got a lot more applications in at the beginning of the year. But we do have several stories about students who didn't get into their institution of choice specifically because they weren't able to get the transcripts through in time. And I don't mean to be speaking at all anything against the high school registrars. The registrars are incredibly busy. My school and a lot of the schools that our program works with have a high mobile population that transfer in and out of schools, and I can tell you the registrar's office was directly across from my classroom in the school, and just about every morning for the entire year there were 20 to 30 students, each with parents with them, either checking into or pulling out of that school to move. And so registrars are definitely overwhelmed with the amount of work coming through, and that affects the college going process. I personally believe that even though we work more on the college-going side of things and the process of ranking falls under the registrar's duties, that's definitely a P-16 issue. That's definitely a college-going issue, because if students don't have the information, then you can give them the messages as many times as you like, but if they don't have a way to implement that and understand how that relates to them personally, then it might not sink in. And so, for example, like I said, we talked to students about the importance of rank and GPA, but it wasn't until they had a piece of paper in their hand that told them where they stood. I had teachers, I prepared a lesson plan to explain the ranks and what they meant, that we have an advocacy period at our school, which also ties into when y'all were talking about setting aside time for college going. That was a resource that I heavily used at my school. I used that time to try to get in as many college going activities as I possibly could. And so the lesson plan explained the ranks, talked about what different institutions' average class ranks and GPAs are coming in. So that really made it very real to the students. Did y'all have anything else to add on access to information and transcripts?
Yeah, I'd like to just to follow up on that really quickly. So another area that we haven't quite mentioned, so we talked about a little bit about admissions and how knowing your rank is really important to knowing where you could potentially get admitted. But it's also important for getting a scholarship. A lot of scholarships will ask you, what is your class rank, where are you, what's your GPA? And another thing that we talked about was access to transcripts. The registrars are already way overloaded just trying to process so many transcripts, and usually by paper, at least at my school, for all of the different colleges that the students are applying to. But a lot of scholarships will also request that you provide a transcript. And so just the turnaround time on getting the transcripts for the students prohibited them potentially from getting some transcripts that would have a quick turnaround, a quick deadline, and that's as far as not just college access, but college success. If they can't pay for where they're going, then they're not going to be able to attend, and so that's really important as well.
So especially if we can find some way to get more support in, or maybe sometimes it's the way that these policies are interpreted at the schools. A lot of our schools were operating under the same policies, but they were interpreted differently, and that affected the way that it was interpreted still affected the services. And so we believe that we need to find a way to clarify those roles and maybe make it easier for registrars to send out transcripts, maybe provide additional supports in other areas. We just wanted to share it with you as a barrier that we encountered in the schools, that policies in the registrar's office have an extreme impact on a school's college-going culture just by the way that they're implemented. And then I think Chris we're going to talk a little bit about awareness of tech programs.
We need to speed things along. We have a number of agenda items to still go through. So
sure. Okay. So the next barrier that we want to talk about, and is very related to this, is awareness of tech prep programs. So students are not often connected with tech prep programs early. That's a tongue twister. Early in high school, we found that a lot of students don't know potentially that the tech classes that they may be taking are counting as electives, which is important to know about how their class schedules are going to be set up. And another thing that we've noted is that the Texas Workforce Commission has several resources available for students who want to go to take trade jobs. But let's see. Students aren't necessarily getting the correct vocational studies at the schools that they want to go to, and so one analog that we can provide is that schools with magnet programs, students can get redistricted to those schools if they want to take do that particular magnet program. But I know, for example, a lot of students at my school who wanted to do auto tech could have potentially gone to Jacobs School, which had an auto tech program, but that sort of functionality wasn't available for them, and so they weren't getting that necessary education when they were in high school that they could have been getting. So let's see. And something that the College for All Texans program does is has a college comparison tool where you can take different colleges and compare them to each other, and you can use that as a way to find what college matches you the best. We would really like, if it was possible, to create a similar tool for trade schools and vocational schools that students could use to see what their options are and then compare them. So far we've been kind of doing it by hand, and we also don't necessarily know what all the options are that are available, and so we as advisors may find difficulties just supporting the students in that area. Another thing is that
if you go out to the Texas Workforce page on career schools and colleges, which we oversee, there's actually that comparison by trade.
Oh,
it
great!
Tells you all the schools and what they charge, and we're working with co-board in getting the community colleges included in that to incorporate those two. I have a quick question I'd like to, well, not a question but a comment. One of the populations we work with in our youth program is the kids aging out of foster care. We fund several transition centers around the state. The tuition issue is generally not an issue because they are given tuition assistance, but I think it'd be important for this program to reach out through the foster care network, particularly when they have the orientation for foster parents, but specifically try to get information and target those young people. They skip around a lot in different schools. It's hard to keep track with them. And when you're doing your hiring, you're selecting, try to find a success story out of the foster care system. It would be kind of similar to what you're talking about, being able to see that they too can make these great accomplishments. But it's a hard population to serve in the areas that you're in right now, are where the majority of kids who age out of foster care reside. So I'd encourage you to get with DFPS and talk with them about their PALS program.
Thank you. And I know I definitely worked with a lot of students that were in foster care, and we had things that we had to do on a set timeline for them. So that is something that that I've experienced personally.
And it would be good to try to put together a handoff if these kids are, because they end up swapping schools around quite a bit, and they can get lost real easily in the crowd. So if you could tag them as being able to transfer them, to one of ours or sign it someone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Another barrier that did you?
No, I just wanted to ask Deborah, and there is information on the DARS website that would It would enable disabled youngsters who are interested in going to college to get information.
We can certainly make sure that those links are there, but, and that's something, again, that our transition counselors work one-on-one with the students on.
Great.
That's great.
I think Allison actually has something to say about students with disabilities. This would be a good time.
Yeah, I worked with a lot of our students with disabilities, and one of the barriers I found though was that for the SAT and the ACT testing, it is very hard to get those accommodations. I spent hours trying to do it with College Board and with ACT, and it just never happened. And so those kids took the tests that were eligible for accommodations, but for the paperwork and everything just never really went through. And so if maybe we could work with the districts, because I know it's a pretty long process in order to get all that paperwork in. So if maybe y'all could work with the districts and the schools to help that paperwork go through, so that those students who can take it just need extended time or whatever the accommodations may be for the standardized tests.
We also found that school personnel, in some instances, because of the difficulty and time involved in the process, we would overhear students being discouraged from using those resources just specifically because it was such a time-consuming process on behalf of the school. And if we can find any way to streamline that and make it so that the students still have access to that. I know I personally I met with every special ed class that was in the school, and this is going to transition us into sort of talking about the minimum plan, but I worked with all of those students and they needed the most additional help and resources. I talked to them about advocating for yourself, especially when I talked to them about what their college options were, especially for the students that were on the minimum plan. I talked to them about student with disability services available at each institution, especially within Houston Community College, since that's where a lot of them were interested in going. So it was definitely a population that needed additional resources and time and energy, and a lot of times the people that we work with in our schools are wearing so many hats that they only have limited time to devote to each of the high needs populations that they're working with. And so I tried to accommodate for that in my school, and I know that Allison was saying that she tried to put her hand in getting the testing accommodations, but the process is just so lengthy that it makes it difficult for us. So if they could get any additional support, that would definitely help the students. And then on the note of minimum plan, another barrier that we encountered was registrars and counselors having confusion about the minimum graduation plan and the uniform admissions policy. At my school and in several locations, we found that sometimes the minimum plan, instead of being a default backup, very difficult to access plan, it was used more as a matter of convenience to graduate students and get them through the school. But now with uniform admissions policy in place, that has a severely limiting factor on their ability to enroll in institutions. I worked with a lot of students who were in the middle of applying to four-year institutions, and due to errors in scheduling that put students in courses out of sequence beyond the student's control, we had a very large group of students, over 50 students, that were automatically moved over to the minimum plan, and the school was not aware of the resources like the exemption form that would cover students and still allow them to attend a four-year institution. That also affects their Texas grant eligibility being on the minimum plan, and this definitely wasn't the case in all schools.
Let me ask a question, Matt. Maybe you're the best person to answer this question. Do you submit a report at the end of the year to the principal with a copy to the superintendent about your experiences where you encounter and indicating what kinds of problems you encounter, as well as indicating the successes you've had?
So what is submitted to each principal and superintendent is the evaluation. So there's a full school survey at the end of the year, and then also once we have the National Student Clearinghouse information about fall enrollments, and we actually pull their last couple of years of enrollments to show principals and students what that trend was. There is a section in that report for the advisors to report on any kinds of difficulties or issues. What we want to be very careful of course, is that we are making suggestions to the principals and schools as they do, but we want to be very respectful of the fact that we're guests in those schools as well. So couple of these things they actually did manage to change during the year. We found out that there was a confusion between the Texas Grant and the Texas Scholars Program, and that many students were being marked ineligible for Texas grants because they thought it was the Texas Scholars Program. And we actually had that fixed, and we did that because of our partnership with the coordinating board. You sent out, we found out there was a problem. We brought that to your attention. The coordinating board sent out a letter to all the registrars and counselors clarifying what the policy was on Texas grants. So I think many of these things can be just improved by providing that feedback.
And I would, I'll ask superintendents like Danny, for example, about whether this might work. But I'd be willing to send a letter. You could identify some obstacles that you've had, and I could write a polite letter saying these are obstacles we've identified that inhibit your students from being able to either apply to college or to apply for a Texas grant. I would suspect that most superintendents and principals would be pleased to have that information.
I would agree, and I would probably go even further and to say a list of common obstacles and have it go out to all superintendents, for example, and because what they found in one school is probably going to be, I'm not going to say in every school, but in multiple schools. And I know our school district, for example, has kind of a reverse thing where we've got some counselors on college campuses working with our first-year students, and we're finding things. And I think that's, I thought of that, the reverse there, that when you put college people in high schools, you find out, and if you put some high school people in colleges, you start finding out where all these mismatches are, because there's a lot of things where we don't understand each other's systems, or we don't understand how decisions we're making at our level are impacting, because of this misunderstanding. We think we understand each other's systems, but we really don't. So,
based on what you said about a letter to superintendents being more persuasive, if it comes from Commissioner Scott, I'm sure I could ask Robert to.
I think a letter from both of you would probably be most persuasive. And it's exactly why we're here today to tell you about these things, is that I think we rely on the leadership of this state to digest what they're bringing back from the field and see if we can't make a change larger than just where they are in the students they serve.
Well, the whole purpose of this council is to assist initiatives and activities like yours to become successful, and based on the results that you've gotten after just 1 year, and the interest in expanding the program in high schools across the state is extremely promising and encouraging. We will help you. I just want to make sure that members of the council understand that although you're all from UT, you're all trained. Whatever institution provides the training, that you're not supposed to give the students a biased view of one institution over another. You are, in fact, looking for a good fit, and in the training that you and the advising that you provide students, community colleges and certificate programs are just as valuable and just as prestigious as baccalaureate programs from selective institutions.
Absolutely. And they can all just tell you quickly, where are your kids going?
They're going everywhere. I mean, they're going all over the place. I have a kid going to Cornell. I have a kid going to NYU. I have a kid going to Notre Dame. I have a couple kids going to UT, A&M, UTSA, St. Mary's. I have a lot going to the community colleges in San Antonio. So kind of going all over.
When we entered that school, their principal told me they had gone to graduation, and every kid that walked across the stage would announce where they were going to college or if they were going to college, and they were all two institutions, the local community college and a local open enrollment private school. And she said if she heard one of those two names again, she was going to throw up. And so she's quite a character. But in any case, what they have done in these schools is, and this is an outcome measure for our evaluation, is to not look simply at the college-going rate, but the diversity and types of institutions that these students are attending, because what that is an indication that they're making better, more informed choices. Better, more informed choices results in increased persistence.
Yeah.
And that
you do have the kids time in the 40 and
So, and I will plug our Facebook page. So if you go to the Advise Texas Facebook page, you will see a picture up there of 32 Aggies doing hook 'em. And so we are not training just the UT advisors to advocate for other institutions, but all the chapters are doing the same thing. So.
If this council can help this program in any way, let me know, and I'm sure that all the individual members of the council would be happy to help. To the superintendents and community college presidents and university presidents who might be listening to this webcast, I'm sure they'd be happy to help as well.
Commissioner Paredes, can I make a couple just suggestions to that point?
We've got to move on.
Yeah. So just three quick comments. One, if it sounds like some of the challenges are sort of hand-to-hand combat at the campus, but some of them are potentially either business process or technology challenges. So my two suggestions is, one, Matt, to build into your contractual agreement with the 120 schools that part of what happens is you do an annual presentation to the Board of Trustees of the district. Because a letter, with all due respect, a letter from the Commissioners of Education, may do something, may not, but if there's an annual presentation to the school board, to the superintendent, where you have a similar setup, and you're presenting the results, and you're presenting the challenges, and you're presenting the opportunities, and that's part of the annual cycle, that will raise the issues in a different way, and staff is responsive, when there are challenges and opportunities that are presented at the board level. On the business process and the technology solutions, we have some folks on our team, I think, that can help look at like the register thing. Because it could be that it's just happens to be these three individual schools, but if it's a macro problem, there's a whole Texas state data system that's going on. The coordinating board is looking at National Student Clearinghouse, so there's a whole lot of technology solutions that are being implemented right now that if this part of the equation is not being considered. And then finally, just to the three advisors, I'd just like to thank you for your public service. This is the same to me as serving in the military or doing the Peace Corps or doing Teach for America. And for you to take a year or two out of your life to make a difference in the lives of these young students. The story about Clarabelle, she will have a different trajectory.
Her whole family.
Yeah, and all of you, have had that impact on students. So thank you for your public service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having
Very
us.
impressive presentation. It's almost 10 after 4. Let me suggest, let's bring up the people from Power Set. I suggest that we combine agenda items 8 and 9, the status of Texas workforce and the tri-agency partnership. They're actually very closely related, and we'll try to get to, we've done number 11, and we'll try to get to number 10.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Valerie Segovia, and I work with the Nuclear Power Institute at oh, I'm sorry. Is it on now? Yeah. I work with the Nuclear Power Institute at Texas A&M. The Nuclear Power Institute was created about 4 years ago, but I've only been with the Institute for 2 years. Prior to that, I was a high school principal, assistant principal, counselor, elementary school teacher. Is this the clicker? One of the main missions of the Nuclear Power Institute is to build the workforce, specifically nuclear. But as we work with universities and colleges, that's definitely their focus. But when we work with secondary schools, high schools, elementary schools, it's all about STEM. Having my background, it was such a wonderful opportunity to be able to work in this capacity as a public school administrator, an educator. There was always that frustration of secondary and post-secondary industry and agencies all seem to have the same goals, but we all to me, in my opinion, we all were on these islands where we looked at each other and we had our own opinions of how we were all handling our objectives. It was just very frustrating because of our own issues and our own expectations and priorities, we never really came together. So having this opportunity and working in this capacity is very fulfilling because I'm able to basically be that liaison, have that leadership role of bringing everyone together. Obviously, the challenge is workforce. It doesn't matter if we're at the state level, local level, national level, international level. That's everyone's issue of concern. The first priority that I was given as far as getting job done, one, is creating a program that would increase female students to go in the direction of STEM. We all know that STEM is very underrepresented here in the U.S., Texas, but most definitely with female students. And again, as a high school principal, all those years of walking down the hall, especially as a counselor in those days too, seeing these young women with all this ability, but they never realized it. Maybe they knew that they had that ability, they had this wonderful home life with all this encouragement, but for whatever reason, because sometimes I think for students, they have too many opportunities, so it becomes overwhelming, or you have the other extreme, whereas some of the other groups were talking about earlier, where they just didn't have that background, that encouragement, but they had the ability. So we decided very early on, with our first attempt to work with secondary schools, is to focus on those female students that had an aptitude. And I have to tell you, that was really easy because so many of those girls are right there, right before all of us. We just identified a few components that we thought would be of benefit, a good buy-in to all of our partners. Now again, NPI works with secondary schools, colleges, universities, agencies, so we knew it had to be a win for everyone. And again, as a high school principal, I knew the mentality of administration and teachers. It had to be consistent with their existing efforts. So looking at our requirements, that's definitely in line of what their priorities are. We wanted to make sure that this organization would be attractive to students. Students are overwhelmed sometimes, again, with all the opportunities that they're given at high schools, that sometimes they become invisible to them because they think, especially girls that have this type of aptitude, some of them are in everything. So we thought, especially in the first school that we piloted this program, we thought, well, how can we make it exciting? How can we make it a program that they would really want to be a part of? Well, first of all, we identified them first. We thought if we identify them and then we invite them to attend, that would be very attractive. But we also, because again of our affiliation with all of our partners, we made sure that we were going to make it easy for those schools, that we were going to make it easy for those program sponsors, the Power Set sponsors, to help these students. First of all, we fund them. So through the funds that we receive, the majority of that coming from the Texas Workforce Commission, we were going to fund all of their programming. So that was number one to schools. It wasn't going to come out of any of their budgets. There was going to be no fundraising involved, which is an absolute win to any student and parent. They don't want to hear about any fundraising, that's for sure. And then we wanted to utilize our other partners, the universities and industry. So once we brought this group together, we had this very lovely induction service, which I'll talk about briefly a bit later on, and then we started talking to the girls. Look, you've been identified because you have all these talents, all of this ability. Now, what do you want to do? Well, a lot of them really don't know what they want to do because there's so much out there. So we talked about, all right, what type of schools do you want to go to? What colleges? What would you just be interested in visiting? So we basically planned all their trips. If they wanted to go to Texas A&M or UT, whatever university or college that they wanted to attend, we planned the day for them. They just told us maybe, gave us some basic ideas of maybe what programs that they wanted to see or something specific, and then we'd fill the day with whatever we thought would be of interest and excitement to them. We laid those days out because We know, again, teachers don't have the time to plan, to make those contacts, as we have contacts at all of our partner institutions and all of the other universities that we work with. We had all those people that work with us on a daily basis, so we planned those days, made them very exciting. We offered a guest speaker series. So because this is an organization, these girls meet basically, definitely a minimum of once a month, but a lot of them meet maybe 2 or 3 times a month. And in their meetings, some of them meet during school, some of them meet after school, depending on the structure of their school. They talk about relevance of what they need to do for their next trip or what they're going to do as an organization. But they also had guest speakers come in, and this was a wonderful opportunity to bring in women, because obviously that's our focus, successful women, maybe with a STEM background, to talk about some of the things that they do, the successes that they've had, the experiences that they've had, so that they could share with the girls, so the girls can really not only hear about these things, see these things, but actually have those intimate discussions with people that have those experiences, and then can, again, maybe be a role model to them. Site visits, because definitely initially our partners, our industry partners were all nuclear, obviously, number one being the South Texas Project, and then Comanche Peak in Central Texas. But since our initial year of bringing this organization together, we now have ConocoPhillips, Dow, BASF, because they like our structure and because it is one that has been very successful. We have all these industry partners that are saying, hey, we like what you're doing, bring the girls to our site. So now they're creating their own power set career days where they're having, there's job shadowing activities. You talked about one of the programs on the TWC a site that talks about, it's about the reality check. Well, that was one of the activities that they had at their career day. They had different people from different occupations on the sites. It wasn't just engineers. They did have engineers, but they had nurses and people in human resources, attorneys, everyone that was there, the different types of representation of people that work on sites. Talk to those girls and really talk about, okay, this is my background. Maybe I started off being a teacher, or maybe I started off wanting to do this or that, but this is how I ended up here at ConocoPhillips, and this is how much money I make, and this is what my day looks like, and this is what I wear on the day-to-day. It was really wonderful because the schools that we're in right now, they're rural. So especially in the part of Texas that we're in, we're surrounded by industry. There's nuclear plants, there's petroleum, there's plastics, everyone is around us. But the odd thing is, although they have parents that work at these sites, none of these kids know what's going on, because who really... Okay, I'm a parent, so I can say this. My kids really don't care about what I do. I mean, they think, I'd like to think that they do, and I'd like to think that they really respect what I do. But at the end of the day, if you ask my own personal children, what does your mother do? They can only tell you, I think she works for Texas A&M, even though I've told them a million times. So the same goes for students that have parents that work at some of these industry sites. So again, when they're able to go on site, hear some of these professionals talk about their own careers, they're hearing it at a different level and are appreciating it. Community development. We work with the chambers, we work with Rotary clubs, we work with different community services in the local communities because we want their support. We not only want their support, but we want their awareness of what we're trying to do, because with that, just being aware of our attempts, our efforts, we get that support. We're very active with our judges, our county judges, our local judges, because we know that they are very, very influential in some of the decisions that are made in the area. And I have to say the most compelling aspect or component to this whole program is our mentoring program. We decided very early on that that was going to be a strong feature. Now, we all know of mentoring programs, and we've heard of the one just before us. It is a wonderful one, which really addresses students that are at risk. But this one we wanted to be a little bit different, because in most cases, not all cases, but most cases, these girls that we're identifying are fortunate not to have some of those issues. What we wanted them to specifically mentor them were on professionalism, career opportunities, college choices. So STP, their WIN chapter, Women in Nuclear, they decided they'd provide one-to-one mentorship. And again, it's a wonderful opportunity for them to meet with these women on a one-to-one basis. It's a very organized structure. We spend lots of time nurturing all of our relationships to make sure that their structure, there's a lot of deliverable components to make sure everyone is in line in what we're trying to do and stay consistent and be at high quality. And I have to say, on the side of the women, the professional women that are mentoring, they've really gained a whole lot of awareness of the issues that are going on with students. And I think because they see the good in what they're doing, their management is talking really highly about the program because they see a great return in how these women are responding back at work and their value in what they're doing.
Mallory, I'm going to have to ask you to speed up.
I'm so sorry. Yes. Okay. But anyway, we also asked the high school girls to mentor younger students because our funding limits us to only working with 14 and up. But again, as an educator, I know the value of working with elementary students. So we tried to be a little bit sneaky, but staying inside the rules. We wanted to make sure that our high school girls influenced younger girls, so we partnered them as well. I'm sorry. Again, we're right now we're on a small scale. We're just at 5 schools, 8 schools for sure next year. The issue isn't interest. We definitely have the interest. It's just about funding, maintaining the funding to support all of these schools that want to participate. They're going everywhere. You can see that they're at these sites. They're swimming with the dolphins. They're doing lots of exciting things that are engaging these students. Here, this is just some of the trips that they've taken. They're at the Bush Library. In his office. They're there at ConocoPhillips making presentations. They're with the young students. They're everywhere, just really making their mark. Here, this is just one of the programs that we've had because, again, NPI has an international component too. Whenever we travel, whenever we have some of those international meetings, we always try to bring our teachers along. Not only do we have student programs, but we also have programs for teachers and counselors to really supplement everything that we're doing. Here we had one of our I guess, partners from the IAEA that traveled down to Texas to learn more about our programs, and she met with the Power Set girls, and they had a great time interacting, and again, they were very, very motivated by what she had to say and what she did. You'll always see when we talk about Power Set, unfortunately I did not wear mine today, but they wear a string of pearls, and that is basically our sign. Anytime you see Power Set girls together, it doesn't matter if they're in their matching t-shirts or they're presenting in suits, they always have their pearls on, and that basically goes to symbolize what Power Set is all about. Pearls represent overcoming adversity through hard work, persistence, and tenacity. And again, because it's a female organization, it's all about feminine charm, persistence, perfection, and all of those wonderful things that we like to make sure that they appreciate about themselves. Because we've had great success. We were very, very fortunate that Governor Perry came to Palacios, the first pilot school, to recognize the organization, and Commissioner Scott was there as well. We're very excited. He took the time to recognize Power Set, and then we received more money to start another program to include male students as well, because again, there's a definite need to expand the reach of what we're doing. With this program, with WIT, basically these students, it's male and female, they have all the same opportunities as the Power Set girls, but we did change the standards just a little bit. We lowered the GPA to 2.5, and it wasn't about lowering the expectation, it's about being consistent with what those vocational schools, the technical schools, the community colleges are expecting for students going into the 2-year programs. All of our industry partners say that 70% of their workforce just requires a 2-year degree. So we want to make sure that our students in high school and junior high are becoming aware of that very valuable certificate that they can get and make quite a bit of money after just 2 years of school. Again, there's just basically the requirements of WIT. The outcomes of all of this, a whole lot of excitement, people working together. I think the fact that students are going on very early to industry sites, working with professionals early. Industry is really identifying students very early who they would like to have participate in their internships. They're creating specific Power Set and WIT scholarships, which I think are just is fabulous. And with all of that, we're just trying to do more. More schools want us. We're trying to create more and more programs. We're doing that a whole lot with our teacher programs. And because, again, with ConocoPhillips and Dow and their excitement with what we're doing, they really want us to do more. So to really supplement what our efforts with the younger students, elementary students, they're going to support us financially with our efforts with the younger students. So that component of the mentorship for Power Set, we're going to call it Power Grid, and it stands for Girls Responding to Industry Demands, and that's going to fund our efforts with those elementary school students. And I apologize for speaking too much, too long.
John, this sounds like something we could plug into our T-STEM.
So
I actually just emailed you and connected you with some of our staff because we're doing stuff both with gender equity, have an interest in doing better work with the nuclear industry, the power industry, the energy industry. It's not something we've been good or fluent in. So yeah, you should be getting an email from my folks. And this sounds terrific, and I want to commend Larry Temple for yet another outstanding grant in STEM education.
My idea. I like it.
Well, you didn't screw it up. So, and thank you for shifting from the classroom to really exposing students to college and careers. This sounds terrific.
Thank you so much.
We're obviously not going to meet our STEM goals, and we're way behind on our STEM goals if we don't get more women involved. So this seems like a natural for the T-STEM initiative that you heard described at the beginning of the meeting.
And I would love to somehow engage with Gen X too. I think that's would be just wonderful.
The biggest challenge is when she goes and gives these things out of state, is all these people trying to steal it from her.
Well, but I love Texas, so here we go. Thank you so much.
Aggies don't travel far. Let's thank you very much. Let's combine item 8, Jennifer Jacob, and call Richard back to talk about the partnership among the 3 agencies, and then talk about the specific issues focusing on workforce.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to cede my time to the other presenters and catch you on another meeting. It would not at all.
We've got half an hour, so why don't we?
I need at least half an hour. So. No, I literally, if time is a problem, I would have no problem ceding and submitting my PowerPoint to the group and do it another day.
Well, why don't we call you up and see if we can incorporate you to? Okay. If you don't finish, we'll call you back. But let's not waste your time. Let's see how much we can get done in the next half hour.
And
I
with
personally have
deference,
already learned so many things that it's worthwhile just being here already.
This presentation will be very short, I promise. The first thing I wanted to do was introduce the members of the tri-agency partnership. Linda Munoz, who is with the coordinating board. Clint Winters, who is with the Workforce Commission, was unable to be with us today. And Joni Rethlake, who is the state director for adult education, is the technical assistance contractor for the Texas Education Agency. And I am Jennifer Jacob with the Texas Education Agency. The tri-agency partnership is a collaboration of staff of the 3 agencies that focus on promoting integration and coordination in the areas of adult education, literacy, college and career readiness, English as a second language, and employment. Currently, the group is working on 2 ongoing projects. We have a project called Policy to Performance, which is actually a technical assistance grant from the U.S. Department of Education. It is for building an integrated system that promotes and supports the transition of adult education students to college and careers. And the second project that we have going is actually responding to 2 of the long-term objectives in Advancing Texas, which is the Texas Workforce Investment Council's strategic plan. Being the bureaucrats that we are, we made the decision to consolidate these activities, and we're jointly implementing pilot projects that respond to both of the policy to performance goals and the long-term objectives of Advancing Texas. These we refer to by the numbers that they are listed in Advancing Texas plan, and C3 is the first one I'd like to give you an update, or actually actually Linda will give you an update on that. The C3 goal in Advancing Texas is by 2013, we will design and implement an integrated adult education and workforce skills training program to enhance employment outcomes for English language learner populations. The C3 project is being funded by and is under the direction of the coordinating board, but it is a tri-agency partnership in that the tri-agency partner committee is the advisory committee. And Dr. Linda Munoz will provide a quick summary.
Okay, I'll just talk very briefly about the Adult Basic Ed Innovation Grants that have been issued. The RFA was issued, and there are 7 programs currently recommended for funding. We haven't got final approval yet for those 7 programs, and these are programs that are integrated in terms of, I think you heard about it at your last meeting, the Alamo Community College Districts, similar to that, except the only difference is that 50% of the population served under these programs should be ESL students, so ESL adults. So far of the 7 programs that we're recommending for funding, that's the case at those colleges.
Okay. Great. And just quickly, the second objective that we're working on is by 2013 to design and implement targeted adult basic education programs to enhance employment outcomes for populations requiring workplace literacy skills. This is C4, and it's being funded by the Texas Education Agency, but like C3, it's a tri-agency partnership in that we've assumed an advisory role through the committee. The C4 project focuses on strengthening collaboration between local career centers and the local adult education programs. It's targeted to the Austin, San Antonio, and Houston areas to support adult education student transitions from education into the workforce. These 3 regions were selected by a survey that was conducted by the Texas Workforce Commission, which identified the areas of the state that had the most robust relationships between the adult education programs and the workforce programs. Each pilot site must demonstrate an integration of intensive and accelerated GED instruction with a career awareness and workplace literacy curriculum. In addition, each site must also form a local workforce literacy resource team which will advise the project in each region. Project deliverables include development of a cross-agency referral process and implementation of college and career readiness curriculum. The proposals from each of the 3 selected areas are currently being reviewed, and we're going into negotiations of final contracts. We anticipate classes will begin in August, and we target more than 150 students between the 3 projects. So if there's nothing more that you take away from the presentation today, it's to know that the 3 agencies are working in partnership to start building transition pathways from adult education to college education or to workplace and careers.
Well, let me ask a question, and this applies to all 3 of you. I was at a meeting a couple of weeks ago of the Education Commission of the States, and I've heard about this program recurrently, and I'm wondering why we can't do this in Texas. The Tennessee Technical Colleges program. Richard, I'm sure you know.
I've heard of it. I don't know any details.
It's what it does is it's an intensive. It's based on the assumption that workers who are unemployed have a lot of free time on their hands, and these technical colleges train people for specific jobs that are available. The students go to class or go to school or in training at the technical institution for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and they finish these training programs along with basic literacy skills in a very short period of time, sometimes 6 weeks, 8 weeks, but they compress a certification program into a very brief period of time. The other thing that's extraordinary about this program is whereas the completion rates in most technical colleges around the country is about 25% for a 2-year program, the completion rate for these programs is in the high 70s. And they're very attractive to displaced workers or unemployed workers because they see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's very intensive. And once again, it combines workforce training with basic skills training. And once again, it gets people prepared to take a job in a record period of time.
Mm-hmm. Do you recall the costs associated with those programs?
Well, I understand what they've done is by compressing the program into a short period of time, it's not any more expensive than it would be if you dragged out the program over 1 or 2 years.
So I've seen a presentation on this. First, I would say the Tennessee technical system, I think, is closer to TSTC in terms of a model. Second, and I saw Stan Jones present on this at a philanthropy deal. The students are in courses basically 9 to 5. Mm-hmm. So there's some type of, I don't know if it's, they get a grant, kind of like Capital Idea, like there's some sort of supplemental so they can still survive and, put food on the table and pay the mortgage. But it's a 4 or 5 day a week, 9 to 5 model. So structurally,
well, they're
very
unemployed. They're collecting unemployment benefits and.
In my old job, I used to run programs like this, but I think looking at it, there's no reason it couldn't be done on the workforce side of a community college, but I think it's structured more like what TSTC does or like a Capital Idea or IEF does, where it's sort of full-time intensive training.
Project Quest or one of those.
Exactly.
Well, I do want to point out that we have 8 of these adult basic ed innovation grants that are doing very much what you're talking about. A lot like TSTC in Harlingen has students in their programs 6 to 8 hours a day. And they're doing maybe a phlebotomy class in the morning, and then they're doing basic skills training in the afternoon. And if they still need a GED, they're doing that as well. So, and these are contextualized basic skills classes to that phlebotomy class, for example. So they are in the classes for all day, pretty much.
That would be a great panel, Commissioner, in the future. Mm-hmm. I think hearing from
those colleges.
Well, maybe one of those. If there's a TSTC, if each, not that any agency would be doing 3 different things in the same space, but my sense is in sort of the GED, adult ed, entry-level workforce stuff. There's just a lot of, like what program you're in sort of depends on which person you talk to and where you get sorted. But like, what are the best practices, that are serving, 18 to 45-year-olds that are in this same space? That would be helpful for me as a new member to actually. It was like with the Advise Texas students before. Like, it was great to hear Matt, but it was much more helpful for me to hear from actual people on the front lines.
Yeah, and one of the questions I asked was, do all of these programs have to be conducted at a technical college? And the response was no, not necessarily. They could be done at high schools. They could be done at industrials. It could be done at a lot of different places.
Right.
It works because people that are out of work have time on their hands, and they are willing to work extra hard to get a job quickly. And it seems to me that we ought to be able to adopt a version of that model in Texas.
So there's also there's a policy opportunity, because it's very similar to what Dr. King was talking about with his College and Career Academy model, except it's built on a community college dual credit platform.
Yeah.
And so you're drawing, the WADA, thanks to the legislation of students up to age 26. It's on a dual credit, so you're getting both a high school diploma and the dual credit. The workforce component is provided, I think, more through STC than through the workforce board or through the state agencies. But I would say it would be valuable, especially heading into the next legislative session, to have some best practices and to look at how it's probably 4 or 5 different funding sources, both state and federal, could be aligned and coordinated. And if we know what are the 3 or 4 best programs that are getting the best results, is there a way to come out of the next legislative session to say, look, here's the good housekeeping seal of approval of the P-16 Council, that for these adult students, here's the 4 things that we found would work, And I think it could shift this group from being just a review and advisory group to actually presenting some things to the legislature by the three committees, which I'm not aware happens a lot.
Our goal, we talked about this at the last meeting, our goal is to come up with some specific legislative proposals that will help us move towards our goals of better alignment between workforce development and the education system.
So
K through 16.
So I would say one thing that would be helpful is to actually have, basically a list, just of all these different programs and the initiatives. Like the comptroller has this JET thing. I mean, there's just, there's like a dozen different stuff that I get kind of lost. Yeah. But just having, a 1 to 3 pager that has the specific initiatives, how much money, how many students, what's the similarities and the differences, that would be a great place for me, having been sort of out of this space for 6 years.
And could we get some information specifically on what's happening in Tennessee? Get some details about the different programs that are offered at the technical colleges in Tennessee, and see what we might be able to do similarly in Texas?
How do they fund? Are these students on scholarships, or how? Because what we're finding, or what I'm finding of these 8 programs that we have funded already, is the students can't usually afford to get through an entire level 1 certificate, or even into a level 2 certificate.
But I think that the students have to bear some of the cost as well. But those are some of the pieces of information we need to get in order to see if it's replicable in some version or another here in Texas.
Sure, we can get that for you.
All right.
Great.
I think we do a lot of stuff, both Dr. King and I, with Jobs for the Future, and they do a lot of the national stuff, so we can connect you, because it may not be Tennessee, there may be some other states that also have some similar stuff.
We work with Gloria Malasi.
Okay, great, thank you.
Richard, do we have enough time for you to do your presentation?
I'm here at your pleasure, so I'll cover whatever you want.
This meeting must end at 5 o'clock because people have to have other plans.
And there are people behind me as well that may want to address.
Unfortunately, I have to
right?
leave at 4:45. So.
Okay.
I can give you a briefing on the unemployment rates. I can tell you that the Texas part of this recession and the national part of this recession are almost 2 different animals. And when we start looking at the Texas recession versus the national recession in terms of job creation and which industries have added jobs and unemployment rates and things like that, we're almost talking about 2 different kinds of recessions. And I can talk about some of those issues if you'd like, or again, I'd be happy to come back and do that when you have more time.
It sounds to me like this is an important presentation that we shouldn't rush. So if you'll...
Would you like to provide a testimonial for...
I've had the pleasure of hearing this before, and I would hate to see Richard crushed. You're going to find this presentation very sad.
Thank you very much. My preference would be to be able to target directly at either talk about things in general as I do in other environments, or to take some topics specifically that this group would be interested in and be able to follow up with a more targeted
Why don't you and I have a discussion between now and the next council meeting, and we'll talk about specifically tailoring your presentation based on some of the information that you heard
It would be my
today.
pleasure.
Okay.
I do want to add one thing. I talked about a couple of resources. One is a book that we just finished called Working Texas Style, which looks at the impacts of changing business practices, demographic, energy, and technology on worker preparation and job creation during what we think over the next 4 or 5 years here in Texas. There's 20 chapters, and unlike most of the economic tomes that come out of offices like mine, this is written in a very journalistic style. It's a very interesting read. We interviewed about 160 thought leaders throughout Texas, including Michael Dell and Pike Powers, and about 90 corporate human resources people, and asked them questions about issues that they're dealing with, like knowledge transfer and succession planning and the great shift change and impacts of worker preparation and some of those kinds of things. And we address that, and it's available in hard copy or online on our website in full color PDF at lmci.state.tx.us.
So two requests for your consideration, Commissioner. One is we found it really helpful to try to break information out regionally, and whether it was by the workforce region that the coordinating board identifies or by the regions for the TWC, whatever. Just I think it helps understand it when you look at it by a specific region in addition to the statewide aggregate. The second, it would be great to hear the TWC's opinion on the different ways to characterize STEM, because we've got, I don't want to say dueling definitions, we've got authentic differences of opinion about should healthcare be included, should biotech,
Absolutely.
should biomed, how do you look at the industry? I mean, so I think it would help us.
Well, that should be included in.
Well, that's
your
sort of right up my
presentation.
alley. I do dabble in the details associated with that.
Okay. What's the name of that document again? Texas what?
Working Texas style.
Working Texas style, okay.
You provide copies to all the members.
I certainly can, absolutely. And I also want to thank you for the invitation. You're just meeting Valerie here. We have a publication that's scheduled that's targeted at 7th and 8th graders called Why Study This? Careers in Math and Science. And about 5 years ago, we interviewed 20 different people in really interesting math and science careers and tried to make them come alive. And I'm going to get back and try to coordinate an update of that particular version and see if we can't keep that effort going. We found that to be a very, very interesting and useful publication at the middle school level. So thank you for that invitation and initiation.
Van, would you be deeply offended if we postponed your presentation to the next meeting? I think you'd have a more attentive audience if
I am here
if
at
we.
your pleasure, Commissioner.
Well,
I'm yours to command.
I have the advantage that Van works here, so. Yeah. All right. Why don't we postpone both presentations until the next meeting? I promise I'll do a better job of managing time. I will contact you for agenda items, not only for the next meeting but beyond, particularly the new members. You shouldn't feel like you have to wait until I contact you before you provide me information about what you think we ought to be focusing on. But if, unless there's any other business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. I remind you that our next meeting is October the 12th. Thank you very much.
Sure. Got a beautiful campus.